Chapter 37-23. The Golden Origin Dragon Emperor did not know how to answer the heartless Divine King's question. No one would believe that a peak Divine King would be someone's servant. Moreover, this peak Divine King had established a huge force like the Myriad Demon Alliance. The relationship between master and servant was a joke in front of a peak Divine King. If the heartless Divine King became a peak Divine King, he would not be the general manager of the mystical grotto heaven and would not care about the relationship between master and servant. He would definitely become a king and establish a powerful force to compete for the position of overlord of the continent. If the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor still wanted to oppress and control him, he would rather kill the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor and take over the position of overlord. Of course, both he and the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor knew about this and would not say it out loud. After a moment of silence, the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor said in a low voice, "From the current situation, Luo Ho is indeed a servant and is willing to work for Long Tian. There are only two possibilities. First, he is extremely loyal and will not change his mind once he recognizes his master. The second possibility is that he has ulterior motives and is hiding very deeply. He must have an even more shocking plan." The heartless Divine King fell silent. No one knew what he was thinking. After a long time, the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor stood up and walked out of the secret chamber. "Let's go, we should also make a move." The heartless Divine King quickly followed and advised with a smile, "They will need at least a day to travel from the Myriad Demon City to the Sky River Secret Realm. We only need 8 hours. Your Majesty, there is no need to be anxious." The Golden Origin Dragon Emperor did not even turn his head and said indifferently, "If we go early, we can also make arrangements early and avoid any mistakes. After 1,000 years, this is the first time I show myself. I have to be more careful. We can only succeed in this operation. We cannot fail." The heartless Divine King quickly nodded and said with a smile, "Your Majesty is right. I have already prepared carefully for 2 months. There will not be any mistakes. Moreover, Long Tian is likely to follow Luo Ho to the Sky River Secret Realm. At that time, we can kill them all. Even if Long Tian is not with us, we can still kill Luo Ho. Without Luo Ho, the Myriad Demon Alliance will be like a pile of loose sand and will be destroyed in an instant." The Golden Origin Dragon Emperor did not say anything. His lips curled upward into a cold grin, as if he had a well-thought-out plan. A day passed quickly. There were 2 regions between the Demon City and the Sky River Mystic Realm. However, the 2 domains were basically under the control of the 10,000 Demon Alliance. Many empires were attached to the 10,000 Demon Alliance. Luo Ho God King hurried on his divine battleship and used the teleportation arrays of the various capital cities. Finally, late at night, he arrived at the Milky Way Mystic Realm. There was no moon tonight, and the sky was as dark as ink. Faint specks of starlight could be seen, but they were extremely dim. In front of the divine worship was a boundless stretch of lofty mountains and precipitous ridges. They were faintly discernible under the night sky, and only black shadows could be seen. The mountains here were very steep, with many cliffs and precipitous cliffs. Clouds and mist filled the air. The mountains were lush with greenery, and the boundless primeval forest seemed to have been untouched for tens of thousands of years. It was unknown how many birds and beasts lived in this uninhabited mountain range. Ji Tianxing used his divine sense to scan and discovered that celestial deity realm demonic beasts and fierce beasts could be seen everywhere in the mountain range. Even divine lord realm beast kings also frequently discovered them. Such a dangerous place, unless one was a divine king powerhouse, one absolutely would not dare to rashly enter. The entrance to the Sky River Secret Realm was in the depths of the mountains. Not to mention that the entrance to the secret realm was hidden, and it was difficult for ordinary people to find it. Just the dangers of the mountains and precipitous ridges alone were enough to deter 99% of explorers. And the very few who could find the entrance and enter the Sky River secret realm were all Divine King powerhouses. Luoho God King steered the divine battleship, slowed down, and concealed the tracks and aura of the divine battleship. They began to approach a certain mountain peak. "Young master, we're almost there." Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a frown, "The Sky River secret realm is isolated from the rest of the world and is extremely dangerous. However, many divine kings enter to explore every year. If Wuhan was really rescued by the Golden Dragon Emperor, why would it imprison Wuhan here? Logically speaking, the Golden Dragon Emperor doesn't know me or Wuhan's identity, so it shouldn't go through so much trouble." Previously, when he heard news of Wuhan and her whereabouts, he was filled with excitement. Now that 2 days had passed, his mood had calmed down, and he gradually felt that something was wrong. There were many suspicious points in this matter, and they could not withstand scrutiny. Luoho God King understood what he meant and said, "I understand what you mean, young master. You suspect that this is a trap set by the Golden Dragon Emperor. However, you also said that as long as there's news of Little Mistress, even if it's just a glimmer of hope, you can't miss it. Moreover, Little Mistress's bloodline and background are extraordinary. Perhaps the Golden Dragon Emperor has other thoughts and plans. No matter what, we're already here, so we have to go in and take a look." Ji Tianqing thought about it and agreed with Luoho God King's words. He nodded and said, "Yes, be careful." Soon, the divine battleship landed on the peak of a lone mountain. This black and gray mountain was more than 3,000 feet tall, but it only had a radius of a few dozen miles. It was like a giant sword that pierced through the sky and clouds, standing between heaven and earth, aloof from the world. The lone mountain was surrounded by almost perfectly straight cliffs. There was not a single blade of grass growing on the mountain peak and cliffs. Even birds would not be willing to stop by. Ji Tianqing used his divine sense to scan the mountain peak and discovered that it was not made of ordinary earth and rocks, but of extremely hard special ores. He thought to himself, no wonder this lone mountain is so special. Even the traces of the vicissitudes of life are so faint. Swoosh! The divine battleship landed silently on the mountain peak, still invisible. The mountain peak was not flat. It was full of potholes and craggy boulders. There were signs of swords and axes everywhere. It was obvious that many powerful cultivators had fought here over the years. In the middle of the empty mountain peak, there was a fortress made of black boulders. From afar, it looked like a crude fortress. However, upon closer inspection, one would discover that it was an ugly and primitive sacrificial altar array. There was no beauty in it, and it did not have the majesty of a divine array. However, that sacrificial altar array was the entrance to the heavenly river mystic realm. Around the sacrificial altar array, there were more than 30 divine lord experts standing guard. They were clad in armor and wielding swords. In the darkness of the night, there were also 4 divine king experts hiding on the mountain peak and on the ground. These demons came from different races. Their strength, aura, and appearance were all different. It was difficult to tell which force they came from. However, Ji Tianqing and Divine King Luoho both knew that these were from the mysterious grotto heaven. Why are these people standing guard here so openly? Was it like this before? Ji Tianqing frowned and became even more suspicious. Divine King Luoho nodded and said, "It has always been like this. More than 50 years ago, the mysterious grotto heaven sent a group of experts to guard this place. Even the governor of the Tianhe zone had to send people to guard and protect this place. Back then, countless adventurers entered the heavenly river mystic realm to explore and search for treasures. However, since then, this place has become the property of the mysterious grotto heaven. Only their people explore the mystic realm." End of chapter. Chapter 37-24. Divine King Luoho's explanation calmed Ji Tianqing down a little. He had suspected that this was a trap set up by the abstruse grotto heaven to lure him here and ambush him. But now, it seemed that he had been overthinking. No matter how cunning the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor was, he could not have set up this trap more than 50 years ago. Moreover, the guards guarding the mystic realm's entrance were not very strong. More than 30 god lords and 4 lower god kings could only guard against ordinary adventurers. Trying to deal with the 10,000 demon alliance was no different from courting death. Let's not waste any time. Let's do it. Ji Tianqing made a decision. Divine King Luo Hoan nodded and immediately used a mystic art to release an invisible divine spirit energy that was transmitted through the divine ship. Swish. 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 Instantly, tens of thousands of divine spirit energy spread out and silently enveloped the mountain peak. In the next instant, that invisible divine soul power imprisoned more than 30 divine lord realm experts. Before they could react or resist, their godheads were crushed and their lives were cut off. Thump. Thump, one after another, the armored divine lord masters quietly fell around the altar array, emitting faint thuds as they did so. At this moment, the 4 lower god kings who had been hiding underground all this time sensed something amiss. The 4 of them were filled with fear. They turned into streaks of light and green smoke or concealed themselves as they flew out from underground. But just as they flew to the surface and saw the dead experts, they felt a piercing pain in their spiritual sea. Swish. 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 In the blink of an eye, tens of thousands of invisible divine spirit energy tightly wrapped around them and ruthlessly crushed their godheads. The 4 lower god kings also died on the spot. His body, which did not seem to be injured at all, fell to the ground powerlessly with a soft thud. Just like that, Divine King Luoho easily dealt with the guards at the entrance. He cautiously released his divine sense and scanned the area around the mountain peak. After confirming that no one was hiding in the dark, he flew out of the divine ship. Swish. Swish. Everyone else remained in the divine ship. He and Ji Tianqing left the divine ship and went to the sacrificial altar array. The 2 of them stared at the ground, carefully observing the ancient patterns on the boulder, and silently pondered. About 7 minutes later, God King Rahu was able to make some headway. He had vaguely found a way to resolve this. This is a king-grade high-grade divine array. It has a history of over 10,000 years, but after being repaired and improved by later generations, its power has obviously increased by a lot. God King Rahu analyzed the array before him and sent a voice transmission to Ji Tianqing. Young master, please wait for a moment. This old servant will be able to deduce a way to break the array very soon. No need, I'll do it. Ji Tianqing smiled and waved his hand. God King Rahu was taken aback. He stared at him in shock. Ji Tianqing didn't say anything else. He raised his hands with a solemn expression and formed a hand seal. He shot out rays of 5-colored divine light and infused them into the formation beneath his feet. As a result, the array patterns on the boulder lit up with a dazzling light. An array network that spanned 10,000 feet gradually appeared in the night sky. Although the array wasn't big, it had hundreds of millions of array patterns. It was abnormally complex. However, Ji Tianqing was focused. His golden eyes stared at the array network. His hands shot out countless rays of dazzling light and infused them into the array. God King Rahu stood to the side. He could no longer conceal the surprise in his eyes as he watched Zhou Donghuang use his arts to break the array. What exquisite and mystical array-breaking arts! What vigorous and pure divine power! God King Rahu praised in his heart. He secretly estimated Ji Tianqing's strength and estimated that he wasn't far from a peak god king. Very quickly, 7 minutes passed. Swish! A blazing white door of light more than 10 feet tall appeared in front of the 2. It flickered in the night sky. The entrance to the mystic realm had been deciphered. Ji Tianqing stopped. Let's go. He didn't waste any time. He stepped through the door of light and entered the heavenly river mystic realm. God King Rahu gathered his thoughts and suppressed the shock in his heart. He hurriedly followed. Swish! In a flash of white light, Ji Tianqing and God King Rahu arrived in another world. The heavenly river mystic realm was an alternate dimension attached to the dragon realm. Or rather, it was a small world. This mystic realm's territory exceeded a radius of 100,000 miles. Even if Ji Tianqing fully unleashed his divine sense, he still couldn't reach the end of the mystic realm. Within 100,000 miles, there were grasslands, mountains, rivers, lakes, and of course, endless forests. Although many birds and beasts lived in these areas, their strength was relatively low. Even though there were many precious flowers and herbs growing within these 100,000 miles, they didn't catch the eye of Ji Tianqing and God King Rahu. In fact, this 100,000-mile area was relatively peaceful. There was no danger at all. Ji Tianqing looked up at the sky. He discovered that the sky was like a transparent mirror. He could clearly see the outer realm. In the boundless void, there were billions of specks of starlight shining brightly, sprinkling down cold starlight. Therefore, the heavenly river mystic realm was always under the dim starlight. It seemed especially cold and cheerless. As the two flew forward, God King Rahu explained, "Our alliances Hu Xinyue and Ao Jining once entered the heavenly river mystic realm to explore and search for treasures. They have some experience. This mystic realm is very large. It's at least 1,000,000 miles wide. This is the outermost region, so it's very peaceful. There are no dangers. The dangers, treasures, and resources are all hidden in the deepest part of the mystic realm." Ji Tianqing was expressionless. He said, "We are not here to explore and search for treasures. Those are not important. Let's find where Wuhan is imprisoned first." God King Rahu nodded silently. He released his divine sense and probed the situation in all directions. About 7 minutes later, the master and servant had flown 400,000 miles and were about to reach the center of the mystic realm. Right at this moment, their divine senses simultaneously detected that there was a mountain that was a few thousand meters tall, 90,000 kilometers ahead of them. At the peak of the towering mountain peak was an open space with a radius of 100 miles. It was very flat. However, there was a powerful divine array set up on that open space. There was a colorful light shield that covered the peak of the mountain. The divine array's light shield was not only flashing with colorful light, but there were also thousands of lightning arcs. It emitted extremely powerful and explosive divine power fluctuations. There were over 20 guards standing guard around the light barrier. There were even 2 auras of divine king experts hidden in the dark, faintly discernible. The 2 were still very far from the mountain peak. Their divine senses could not penetrate the divine array's light shield and probe the situation inside. However, the 2 knew that it was a sealing divine array. It must be used to suppress or seal something. There. Ji Tianqing and God King Rahu looked at each other and understood the answer. They quickly flew over. In just a few dozen breaths, the 2 had flown 90,000 miles and arrived above the towering mountain peak. As they got closer, the 2 realized that inside the sealing divine array, they could vaguely see the figure of a white-robed youth. He was curled up on the ground. The light shield constantly struck down bolts of lightning, ruthlessly whipping the white-robed youth. He was covered in wounds. His white robe was covered in blood and charred black. Chapter 37:25. The sealing formation was a high king-level divine formation. Although it did not cover a large area, its divine might was extremely terrifying. The ground within the formation was covered in charred rocks that were filled with gullies. Clearly, the ground had been struck by countless lightning bolts. As for the white-robed youth with messy hair and blood-stained white hair, he was curled up on the ground. It was an even more tragic sight. Although it was called a white robe, more than half of it was dyed red with blood and charred black. The ground beneath him was also dyed red with blood. The dried dark red bloodstains seemed to be telling of how much he had been beaten and tortured in the sealing formation. Ji Tianqing and Luoho God King could not see the youth's face. However, when they saw such a miserable scene, their hearts tightened, and dense anger and killing intent gushed out from their bodies. Damn Golden Origin Dragon Emperor! How dare he torture little master so cruelly? How vicious! Luoho God King cursed in his heart as intense killing intent flashed in his eyes. Ji Tianqing had originally wanted to use a mystique to pass through the concealment of the sealing formation and carefully examine the white-robed youth's situation. He wanted to ascertain the white-robed youth's identity before deciding whether to save him. Wuhan had been kidnapped for more than a decade and must have changed his appearance. But he believed that even if his son's appearance had changed, it would not be by much. Especially the aura of his son's spirit. It was impossible for it to change. However, Ji Tianqing and Luoho God King were too close to the sealing formation. The 20-odd godly lord guards guarding the formation did not sense anything. But the two hidden godly king experts sensed something amiss and became especially vigilant. Originally, the two of them had been hiding in the dark and had concealed their auras. But now, they no longer concealed their auras. They released their powerful auras and shrouded the mountain peak with their spiritual perception to search repeatedly. Now that the other party was on guard, Ji Tianqing knew that he could not delay any longer and had to make a decision. Therefore, he turned to Luoho God King and transmitted his voice, "The other party is on guard. In order to prevent any accidents, I am prepared to take action." God King Rahu nodded slightly and said, "This old servant has already scouted the surroundings. There are no other experts hiding within a radius of tens of thousands of kilometers. You just have to save the young master. This old servant will protect you and block these guards." "All right." Ji Tianqing nodded. He silently took out the sword of burial of heaven and walked towards the sealing formation. He quickly accumulated God power in his body, and his eyes turned golden. He stared at the seal formation that was flickering with God light, observing its structure, analyzing its network and flaws. 10 breaths later, he arrived in front of the sealing formation. Not only had he found the weak point of the formation, but he had also accumulated the divine power in his body to the peak. "Open!" he roared angrily in his heart. Holding the sword of burial of heaven with both hands, he slashed at a certain wall of light with all his might. In the next moment, 100-meter-long beam of divine sword light slashed at the sealing formation with earth-shattering power. There was a loud boom, like a clap of thunder on a clear day. It was like thunder from the 9 heavens, exploding through the world. Suddenly, the golden sword slashed open a hole in the mighty seal formation, causing numerous cracks to appear on the surface of the formation. The incomparably violent impact caused the entire formation to shake violently. The sudden turn of events stunned the divine lord guards around the formation. It also startled the 2 god kings who were hiding in the dark. The 2 god kings were the first to react. They immediately jumped into the sky and charged at Ji Tianqing with all their might, wielding their Kenshin weapons. The 20-some divine lord guards gradually came to their senses as well. They roared angrily and joined forces to attack Ji Tianqing. Of course, some took the opportunity to send out jade slips and signal arrows to warn others. It seemed like Ji Tianqing was about to be surrounded by the guards. At this moment, the invisible god King Rahu suddenly took out 2 divine sabers and charged at the guards, beginning his slaughter. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. He waved his sabers and slashed out hundreds of golden and blood-red light blades. It was like a rain of swords that blotted out the sky, charging at the guards. Following a series of dull bangs, the 20-some divine lord guards were immediately torn to shreds by the light blades. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. These high-level divine lords were like paper in front of God King Rahu. They were incomparably weak. At the same time, the 2 fierce-looking god kings in blood-red robes also rushed to the vicinity of the hole. These were 2 middle-level god kings of the 6th stage realm. They attacked furiously and charged at Ji Tianqing with all their might. Even if they could not injure Ji Tianqing, they could also stop Ji Tianqing for a moment and delay his footsteps. However, Ji Tianqing's speed was extremely fast. Before the two god kings could reach him, he had already passed through the hole and entered the ceiling formation. The two god kings' attacks missed and they immediately wanted to enter the hole and chase into the formation. At this moment, God King Rahu roared angrily again and slashed out 4 dark green saber lights, slashing towards the two god kings. The saber lights were hundreds of meters long and carried more than 100 types of laws and divine powers. They also contained terrifying poison. Before the saber lights arrived, the cold wind and poison had already enveloped the two god kings. The two middle-level god kings were filled with fear. They could only stop chasing after Ji Tianqing and desperately retreat. How could God King Rahu let them off? Naturally, he would use his divine powers to seal the space within 1,000 miles and imprison the two god kings. Then, he would chase after them with saber in hand. At this moment, Ji Tianqing rushed into the ceiling formation and flew anxiously towards the white-robed youth. He was worried that the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor had set up an ambush in the mystic realm. This battle would definitely alarm the other party. Therefore, he could only save them as quickly as possible and leave the Sky River mystic realm before making any plans. Even though the battle earlier had caused a huge commotion, the white-robed youth was still lying on the ground, twitching in pain. He did not raise his head. It was as if he had been tortured to the point of near unconsciousness. No matter what was happening around him, he could not care less. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing was even more worried. Swoosh! He landed beside the white-robed youth and released his divine sense to envelop him. He checked his injuries and reached out his left hand to hold the white-robed youth's arm, wanting to help him up. At this moment, he only wanted to save them. The white-robed youth only had the strength of a heaven god and was on the verge of death. Therefore, Ji Tianqing did not feel that there was anything wrong. However, something unexpected happened. At the moment Ji Tianqing supported the white-robed young man, the white-robed young man who was originally badly injured and on the verge of death suddenly erupted with an extremely violent killing intent. He suddenly flipped over and raised his hand to stab Ji Tianqing's forehead. His blood-stained hands were holding a pitch-black dagger at some point in time. The dagger exuded a cold aura of death, and the blade shone with a blue light. It clearly contained poison. The two of them were very close to each other, just a step away. The white-robed youth suddenly attacked and unleashed the strength of a high-level god king. Even a peak divine king would not be able to dodge such a heaven-shocking strike that had been planned for a long time and had been carefully plotting for a long time. Chapter 37-26. Ji Tianqing wasn't a peak divine king. Therefore, he couldn't dodge the white-robed youth's full-powered stab. After all, both parties were too close, and the white-robed youth had planned this full-powered assassination for a long time. From the moment he turned around, raised his hand, and stabbed Ji Tianqing's forehead with the dagger, it only took 1/5 of an instant. With such terrifying speed, even gods and ghosts could not fathom it. Clang! That black dagger that contained lethal poison instantly stabbed Ji Tianqing's forehead, and a loud sound of metal clashing rang out. The violent and unparalleled force of impact sent Ji Tianqing flying, and he fell hundreds of meters away. The white-robed youth who looked like he was on his last breath stabbed Ji Tianqing, but he didn't hesitate at all. He stood up as fast as lightning, turned into a stream of light, and charged toward Ji Tianqing again. Because he knew that the attack just now didn't injure Ji Tianqing. Before the dagger stabbed Ji Tianqing's forehead, he raised the Burial of Heaven's sword in his hand, blocking in front of him. The sharp and vicious dagger just happened to stab the Burial of Heaven's sword's blade. Die! The white-robed youth whose face was covered in blood instantly caught up to Ji Tianqing. With a low shout in a fierce tone, he waved the dagger toward Ji Tianqing again. And at this time, Ji Tianqing, who had retreated 1,000 feet away, had already neutralized the violent impact long ago. He had already regained his calm and understood everything. Clearly, this white-robed youth in front of him wasn't without hatred. He was a high-level divine king in disguise. Not only did this person change his appearance, he also used some kind of secret art or divine artifact to hide his true strength. This was definitely something that only a top-notch assassin could do. This ambush and attack could be said to be perfect. If it were anyone else, they would have been assassinated on the spot by that shocking attack. The dagger stabbed into the forehead, destroying the sea of consciousness and godhead, killing the target on the spot. But Ji Tianqing was a monster that couldn't be judged by common sense. His attainments in the sword Dao had long reached the peak of perfection, and it was rare in the world. His mind was connected to the sword of burial of heaven, and he could command it as if it were his own arm. The sword of burial of heaven was like a part of his body. That was why he was able to place the sword of burial of heaven between his eyebrows at the most dangerous moment to block the dagger. After dodging that shocking attack, it would be useless for the white-robed youth to continue chasing after him. Die! Ji Tianqing's face was gloomy as he faced the white-robed youth who was rushing towards him. He shouted angrily and brandished his sword. Crack! With a crisp cracking sound, the sword of burial of heaven shattered the black dagger on the spot. It broke through the white-robed young man's protective light and sent him flying back. While he was still tumbling in the air, half of the white-robed youth's sleeve had already been blown away by the wind. His entire right arm had been chopped off, and the severed arm fell to the ground with a mixture of blood and water. He flew back 1,000 feet and crashed into the edge of the ceiling formation before falling to the ground with a thud. With just one move, Ji Tianqing had injured the white-robed youth. All of this seemed to take a long time to describe, but in reality, it had happened in the blink of an eye. The white-robed youth knew that his assassination had failed and that he was no match for Ji Tianqing in a direct confrontation. He got up without hesitation and fled through the gap in the formation. At the same time, God King Rahu, who was outside the ceiling formation, also saw the situation inside the formation and understood that this was a trap. He brandished his dual sabers and injured the two God Kings, forcing them to retreat. Then, he shouted to Ji Tianqing, who was inside the formation, "Young master, this is the Golden Dragon Emperor's trap. Retreat quickly." Ji Tianqing naturally knew this. When he saw the white-robed youth fly out of the formation without regard for his injuries, he quickly chased after him. Swoosh! The gap in the ceiling formation quickly closed and was about to be restored to its original state. With a flash of white light, Ji Tianqing passed through the gap and escaped the ceiling formation. When he arrived in the sky outside the formation, he and God King Rahu no longer lingered in the battle. They waved their swords and forced the two God Kings back before flying into the distance. But at this moment, dozens of divine lights lit up in the sky in all directions. Swish swish swish. Streaks of light streaked across the sky like lightning and instantly surrounded the mountain peak, forming a circle. Ji Tianqing and God King Rahu could only stop in their tracks. They stood high in the sky and looked at the experts around them. They saw that there were as many as 37 experts in the sky. Including the two God Kings guarding the mountain peak and the white-robed youth, there were exactly 40 of them. And these 40 Fey experts of different forms and races were all godly kings. Most of them were mid-level God Kings, and the weakest had the strength of a 4th-degree God King. And the strongest were naturally peak God Kings. Ha ha ha. Rahu, I have long heard of your name and deeds. Today, I finally get to meet you. There was a burst of laughter from the crowd. Then, a man from the dragon clan wearing a bright yellow divine robe and a luxurious crown walked out under the protection of a few experts. This burly man from the dragon tribe was none other than the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor. And the experts behind him were the General Manager Heartless God King, Martial War Dragon King, and Golden Dragon Guard Governor Qin Yu. Heartless God King and War Dragon King were both 9th-degree God Kings. When they fought with God King Rahu, they did not gain the upper hand. As for Golden Dragon Guard Governor Qinyu, he was at the peak of the 8th degree God King. He had been guarding Xuanji Grotto Heaven for many years. When Ji Tianqing went to Xuanji Grotto Heaven to visit Golden Origin Dragon Emperor, Qinyu was guarding the entrance. In other words, other than Heartless God King, Qinyu was among the God Kings who injured Ji Tianqing. Apart from these famous experts, the white-robed young man who looked miserable was also a LV8 Divine King realm expert. The other 35 God Kings were mostly commanders of Golden Dragon Guards and inspectors of Xuanji Grotto Heaven. Of course, there were also a few southern region lords. A total of 40 God Kings surrounded Ji Tianqing and God King Rahu. Each of them had a smug smile on their faces as if victory was in their hands. At this moment, the white-robed youth flew to the front of Golden Origin Dragon Emperor. After bowing, he said with shame, "Your Majesty Dragon Emperor, please punish me for not completing the mission." Golden Origin Dragon Emperor was in a good mood. He waved his hand disapprovingly and signaled for the white-robed youth to stand up. "Tan Yu, you have completed the mission well. What is your punishment?" The white-robed youth named Tan Yu said with shame, "Your Majesty, we have planned for months and made all the necessary preparations. However, we were not able to kill Long Tian." "Your Majesty, I am ashamed." Before Tan Yu could finish, Golden Origin Dragon Emperor laughed loudly, "Ha ha ha. If Long Tian was killed by you so easily, he is not worthy to be Dragon Emperor's last disciple. Tan Yu, although your disguise and assassination skills are unparalleled and rare, Long Tian and Rahu are not ordinary people. However, Long Tian and Luo Ho aren't ordinary people. Being able to make them not become suspicious and fall into a trap is already a great merit." After hearing Golden Origin Dragon Emperor's explanation, Tan Yu was relieved and did not plead guilty anymore. Chapter 37-27. In fact, there were some loopholes and suspicious points in this scheme and plan. But overall, it was still considered quite thorough and there were no obvious loopholes. Most importantly, Ji Tianqing urgently wanted to find his son, Ji Wuhan. As long as there was a clue or hope, he would not give up. Even if he had to take the risk and fall into a trap, he did not care. Now, it was proven that this was really the Gold Source Dragon Emperor's scheme. Both he and the Luoho Divine King had fallen into it. But he was very calm. He was not angry, upset, or blaming himself. Because he had already mentally prepared himself to fall into a trap. The Luoho Divine King was the same. He looked at the Gold Source Dragon Emperor and the others calmly and transmitted his voice to Ji Tianqing. "Many years ago, our alliance investigated the number of experts in the abstruse Grotto Heaven. We have all the information on everyone except for Tan Yu. We only found out that Tan Yu is the vice commander of the Golden Dragon Guards and is not weaker than Qinyu. But we do not know what race he is, what he looks like, and what skills he is good at. This guy has the nickname of Thousand-Faced Wolf. He never shows his true face and is best at disguise and assassination." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and transmitted his voice. "No wonder he can disguise himself as a heavenly god and be on the verge of death. His life force is weak. He is indeed quite capable. According to what you said, his current appearance of a young man is also a disguise?" The Luoho Divine King nodded. Ji Tianqing continued, "The Heartless Divine King is stronger than Tan Yu and is a top assassin. But his assassination skills are based on movement techniques and control of space. And Tan Yu is good at disguise and sneak attacks. Under certain circumstances, he is even more terrifying than the Heartless Divine King and is hard to guard against." The Luoho Divine King nodded and sneered, "Yes. But once this kind of person is exposed, there is nothing to be afraid of. For example, now that they are openly besieging us, I will find a chance to kill Tan Yu later to prevent future trouble." Ji Tianqing thought for a while and reminded, "You instructed Ao Jinying and the others to investigate Wuhan's whereabouts, but it has always been done secretly. The abstruse grotto heaven actually knew about it and even took the opportunity to set up a trap to lure us in. Now, it seems that the Enigma Paradise has not only planted spies in the Myriad Demon Alliance, but also spies. God King Rahu nodded again, his tone even colder. That's right. When I realized that I had fallen into their trap, this old servant had already thought of this point. Once this matter is over and we return to the Myriad Demon City, this old servant will definitely ferret out the spy and cut him into pieces. The Golden Origin Dragon Emperor frowned when he saw that Ji Tianqing and Luoho God King were not flustered despite being surrounded. Instead, they were calmly discussing something. He stared at Ji Tianqing and God King Rahu, his lips curling into a cold, sinister smile as he said, "Rahu, Long Tian, I know that you two are very cautious. Therefore, inside and outside the Sky River secret realm, including the surroundings of this mountain, there are no supreme-grade divine arrays set up. I was afraid that you would find out. You've really fallen into the trap. You're like turtles in a jar now. This emperor is benevolent and allows you to say your last words." God King Rahu laughed disdainfully. "Golden Origin Dragon Emperor, perhaps you've been the Dragon Emperor for too long and think that you're invincible. Before coming to the Sky River secret realm, I've already taken precautions against this. Do you think that I would be unprepared? Moreover, you've already mobilized most of your forces to kill us here. Now, I'm afraid that only a few watchdogs are left in your Enigma Paradise, right?" God King Rahu's tone was very confident and even carried a hint of threat. The Golden Origin Dragon Emperor frowned immediately, pondering what had gone wrong and whether the Myriad Demon Alliance would take advantage of it. The Heartless God King, Battle Dragon King, Qin Yu, and the others' faces darkened as they secretly raised their guard. However, the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor quickly recovered and laughed proudly. "Ha ha ha. You're about to die, and you're still putting on airs in front of this emperor. That's right, I've brought most of my trusted subordinates. The Enigma Paradise's defense is indeed weaker than usual. However, it's already good enough that those useless subordinates of yours can defend the Myriad Demon City. Don't tell me that the Myriad Demon Alliance dares to take advantage of this opportunity to attack the Enigma Paradise." God King Rahu smiled and said calmly, "Of course not. However, your Enigma Paradise's men do not have the strength to spare to attack the Myriad Demon City. Therefore, my Myriad Demon City is impregnable and is still safe." Before the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor could speak, the Heartless God King shouted with a dark expression, "So what? As long as we kill you and Long Tian, the Myriad Demon City will fall on its own. The Myriad Demon Alliance that you spent so much effort to build will fall apart in 3 to 5 days without a leader." God King Rahu was not angry and even nodded in agreement. "That's right. If Long Tian and I die here, the Myriad Demon Alliance will naturally fall apart. However, the question is, can you kill us?" The Battle Dragon King took a step forward and exuded a towering battle intent. He roared with a domineering aura, "Rahu, don't try to win a battle of words. I didn't kill you the last time at the Black Sea. Today, I'll tear you into pieces." With that, the Battle Dragon King shook his dark golden spear. Divine light burst out from his body as his aura reached its peak and his battle-intent soared. The 30-odd God King experts also gripped their swords and sabers tightly. They gathered their divine power to the peak and prepared to launch a thunderous attack. God King Rahu was fearless. He held his pitch-black divine saber with both hands and sneered. "You're too naive to kill me. Today, I'll teach you a lesson that you'll never forget." As his voice fell, his entire body released an invisible aura that spread out in all directions. Immediately after, with the mountain as the center, green, blue, and black fog suddenly appeared in a radius of 30,000 miles. The fog of different colors appeared out of nowhere and filled the sky. Strong winds could not blow it away, making it look exceptionally strange. Under the God King Rahu's control, the surrounding fog spread rapidly and gathered toward the mountain peak. The rolling fog gradually gathered like a raging wave. Seeing this, the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor, the Heartless God King, and the Battle Dragon King's faces changed. They were filled with fear. It's poisonous fog. Everyone, be careful. As for Ji Tianqing and the God King Rahu, they looked at each other and sneered meaningfully. Others might not know, but Ji Tianqing knew that the God King Rahu's original form was a snake. He had cultivated for more than 20,000 years and cultivated the body of a heavenly dragon from the lowly earth snake. However, the mystiques and secret techniques that he was most proficient in, other than the dragon race's mystic arts, were the snake race's venom. Snakes were inherently sinister. Ah! 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 In the next instant, the five-colored poisonous fog sealed the sky and suppressed the surrounding 30,000 miles. Following a series of screams, the middle-level god kings at the outermost layer of the encirclement were corroded by the poisonous fog and turned into pools of blood. They died tragically on the spot. The weaker middle-level god kings were useless against the five-colored poisonous fog, even if they used their divine power or divine artifacts to protect themselves. Even the stronger high-level god kings were flustered by the poisonous fog. They were all sweating profusely and their faces were green. Chapter 37:28. Just a moment ago, the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor's god kings had been arrogant and confident of their victory. At this moment, the pervasive five-colored poison mist had turned the entire area into chaos. Cries of agony could be heard from the crowd, mixed with a few dying cries. The morale of the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor's godly kings plummeted. Although the unlucky ones who were corroded by the five-colored poison fog and reduced to blood and godly sparks were only intermediate godly kings, their godly kings had their own godly kings. The high-level divine kings all had their own methods and were still able to resist the invasion of the poisonous fog, so they did not lose their lives on the spot. However, in just 10 breaths of time, the godly kings of the mystical grotto had suffered heavy casualties. 18 intermediate godly kings were poisoned to death on the spot. 3 upper godly kings were seriously injured by the poison and could no longer fight. 2 upper godly kings were also poisoned. Although they were not seriously injured, their battle prowess was greatly reduced. As such, only 17 godly kings were left with battle prowess. Retreat quickly. What are you waiting for? Leave the poison fog area first. The godly kings were panicking. Only the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor, Wuxia, and the Battle Dragon King were able to remain calm. Seeing that the five-colored poison fog was very strange and could not be dispersed by divine power, several experts roared angrily and anxiously. Hearing the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor's order, the godly kings felt as if they had been pardoned and fled in panic. If the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor did not give the order, they would not dare to flee. If the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor were to punish them for fleeing, they would lose a layer of skin even if they did not die. Swish swish swish. In the next instant, the 20-odd godly kings who were lucky enough to survive passed through the poison fog at lightning speed and fled into the distance. How could Ji Tianqing and Luoho godly king miss such a good opportunity? The two of them split up and took the opportunity to kill the godly kings who were fleeing in panic. Although the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor, Wuxia, the Battle Dragon King, and Qin Yu had split up to cover the retreat of the godly kings, Ji Tianqing and Luoho godly king went all out and successfully killed 7 godly kings before the godly kings were able to leave the fog area. Of course, this included the 5 injured upper godly kings. A while later, when everyone had retreated from the poisonous mist, only 15 god kings remained on the side of the mysterious paradise. Swish! Swish! Golden Origin Dragon Emperor, Battle Dragon King and the others stood together while the other 10 immortal kings spread out and formed a battle formation in the sky. Everyone stared at the poisonous fog with cold expressions. Their eyes flickered with resentment and hatred. The Golden Origin Dragon Emperor stared at the poisonous fog and said with a gloomy face, "Ever since Luo Ho and Long Tian ascended the mountain, they have been under our surveillance." "When did he set up the poison array?" "Qin Yu, you have been investigating the Myriad Demon Alliance for many years. Why didn't you find out that Luo Ho is proficient in poison?" Many years ago, the Mystic Paradise had noticed the rise of the 10,000 Demon Alliance and started collecting intelligence. Abstruse Grotto Heaven had dozens of copies of information regarding God King Rahu. However, no one could have imagined that God King Luoho's venomous divine ability would be so powerful. It was simply impossible to guard against. Qin Yu was reprimanded by the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor in front of everyone. He immediately bowed in shame and explained, "Your Majesty Dragon Emperor, please calm down. This subordinate has investigated the Rahu God King for many years and I believe that my investigation was thorough and detailed. In the past few hundred years, he has attacked more than 10 times. However, he has never used such a poison array." This subordinate also did not expect that he would actually. Before Qin Yu could finish, the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor waved his hand and interrupted him. He said with a gloomy face, "Shut up. I don't want to hear this now. It has already happened. What's the point of explaining? What we need to do now is to kill them and eliminate all future troubles." Seeing the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor so furious, God King Wuxian sent a voice transmission to console him, "Your Majesty Dragon Emperor, please calm down. This poison array is most likely Luo Ho's trump card. It's normal that we don't know about it. Although we have suffered great losses and lost 25 God Kings, most of them were mid-level God Kings. But these Divine Kings are mostly middle-level Divine Kings, as well as the region masters of the various regions. It's not enough to cause us any serious injuries. We can still easily kill them." This was the truth. The God Kings who died tragically in the poisonous fog were all relatively weak. Of the 15 survivors, other than the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor, God King Wuxian, Qin Yu, and Tan Yu, the other 10 were the cornerstones of the Xuanji Grotto Heaven. They were the true experts. Thinking of this, the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor's anger dissipated slightly and he calmed down. He stared at the surging poisonous fog and said with a dark face, "Those 2 bastards actually hid in the poisonous fog and did not show themselves. Did they think that they would be safe hiding in the poisonous fog?" Although the 5-colored poisonous fog covered the sky and covered the sun, Ji Tianxing and God King Luo Ho's figures. However, the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor's divine consciousness had already detected them hiding in the poisonous fog. The Golden Origin Dragon Emperor locked onto their auras with his divine consciousness and was about to lead God King Wuxian, and the others into the poisonous fog to surround them. God King Wuxian hesitated for a moment before he said in a low voice, "Your Majesty Dragon Emperor, we are not afraid of the poisonous fog and can enter the poisonous fog to surround them. However, our strength will be suppressed in the poison array and we will not be able to gain the upper hand." God King Wuxian also quickly said, "Your Majesty Dragon Emperor, there is no need for us to take the risk of entering the poison array. We can just wait here. They are surrounded and will definitely try to escape from the Sky River Secret Realm. As long as we seal the entrance of the Secret Realm, they will have nowhere to run." The Golden Origin Dragon Emperor was only so anxious to kill God King Luo Ho because of his anger. Now that he heard the advice of his trusted aide, he calmed down and nodded. "The entrance of the Secret Realm has been sealed long ago. They will not be able to escape. Since they are hiding in the poison array and will not come out, we will use our arts to destroy their poison array and force them to show themselves." After he finished speaking, he sighed angrily and said, "It is a pity that my sky-splitting axe is not here. Otherwise, wouldn't it be easy to destroy this poison array?" As a peak god king, the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor ruled the Starsource continent. Naturally, he also had a king-grade supreme-grade divine artifact called the Sky-Splitting Axe. This was one of the most valuable treasures of the ancient dragon tribe. After passing through many hands, he finally obtained it. It was because of the sky-splitting axe and his strength as a peak god king that he was able to conquer and rule the Starsource continent. Unfortunately, his original body was in the extraterritorial galaxy and he carried the sky-splitting axe with him. He was not in the dragon realm. However, even without the sky-splitting axe, the weapon that the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor's clone wielded was a true king-grade supreme-grade divine artifact. He circulated his divine power and swung a sky-shattering staff that was more than 10 feet long. He roared and smashed it at the 5-colored poison array. Boom! In an instant, a blood-red light pillar that was more than 10,000 feet long smashed into the poison array. There was a deafening sound. When the staff smashed into the poison array, a ravine that was a few thousand miles long was created. God King Wu Xin, War Dragon King, Qin Yu, and the others were shocked. They waved their weapons and Kenshin soldiers to attack the poison array. Chapter 3729. The 5-colored poison array set up by Luoho's Supreme God King was not a physical array, nor did it have a light wall like other arrays. Therefore, the attacks of the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor and the others were as light as cotton, unable to exert any force. Even so, the poison array was still smashed to pieces by the crowd. Many empty areas were exposed, like ravines and pits. With the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor and the others' strength and methods, they could destroy the poison array in less than 100 breaths. Within the poison array, Ji Tianqing and Luoho Supreme God King, who were hiding, frowned and looked worried. The two retreated into the depths of the poison array while discussing countermeasures. Ophiuchus, I have not seen you for more than 1,000 years. Your deadly poison array is even more exquisite than before. If I had not paid attention to it, I would not have known when you set it up. Young master, you flatter me. It is a pity that the poison array is unorthodox. It is effective against ordinary Supreme God Kings, but it is useless against experts like the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor and the Battle Dragon King. These bastards are cunning. I thought we could anger them and make them rush into the poison array to attack us. I did not expect them to hold back and destroy the poison array before attacking us. Young master, my plan is not working. The poison array will be destroyed soon. We cannot stay here any longer. We have to leave. Since this is the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor's trap, the exit of the Mystic Realm must have been sealed. They are blocking the west side. We have no way out. From the looks of it, we can only retreat into the depths of the Mystic Realm and look for an opportunity to counterattack. Then we will do as you say. After all, only the two of us can fight in the poison array. Hu Xinyue and Ao Jinying cannot. We have to find another battlefield. In a flash, the master and servant came up with a plan. While the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor and the others were still destroying the poison array, the two of them retreated to the east and left the poison array's range. The Gold Origin Dragon Emperor was indeed very powerful. When Ji Tianqing and Luoho started to retreat, he detected them with his consciousness. After Ji Tianqing and Luoho left the poison array and flew into the depths of the Mystic Realm, he led a dozen Supreme God Kings and chased after them aggressively. Whoosh! Whoosh! Ji Tianqing and Luoho's Supreme God King flew across the sky at the speed of light. A few thousand miles behind them, the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor, Heartless Supreme God King, and the Battle Dragon King chased after them murderously. As time passed, the two parties got closer and closer. Of course, the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor and the others widened the distance. The ones at the front were him, Battle Dragon King, Thoughtless Divine King, Qin Yu, and Tan Yu. The other 10 God Kings were slightly slower and were left behind 10,000 miles away. When Ji Tianqing and Luoho were 200,000 miles away from the poison array, the environment in front of them became more complicated, and dangers gradually appeared. After all, they were already in the depths of the secret realm. Not only were there a large number of resources and treasures hidden, but there were also unknown dangers lurking. Ji Tianqing decided to stop retreating and fight in the air above the lofty mountain range. Luoho God King did not hesitate at all. He hurriedly took out his divine battleship and summoned Hu Xinyue and the others. With a flash of white light, more than 30 figures flew out of the divine warship. The leader was Hu Xinyue and 3 elders. The other 30 were all wearing armor. They were elite guards of the upper-level god realm. The group appeared in the sky. Without the Luoho Supreme God King's order, they got into formation and fought with all their might. Although the 30 upper-level god realm guards were destined to be cannon fodder in this battle, they were not afraid. However, they were not afraid and were prepared to sacrifice themselves. Of course, their sacrifice would not be in vain. They would do their best to delay their opponents and buy time for Ji Tianqing and the Luoho Supreme God King. Just as they got into formation, the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor and the others caught up. Seeing that the Luoho Supreme God King only brought 4 upper-level God Kings and 30 upper-level God Kings, the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor and the others laughed disdainfully. Ha ha ha. The 10,000 Demon Alliance really has no one. Do you think these trash can stop me? What an idiot. Luoho, you were so confident earlier. I thought you brought a lot of people. I didn't expect you to only bring so few people. Thieves of the 10,000 Demon Alliance, die. The 5 experts laughed wildly and brandished their Kenshin weapons. They were about to attack Hu Xinyue and the others. However, the Luoho Supreme God King brandished his dual blades and charged forward with murderous intent. Gold Origin Dragon Emperor, I am your opponent. The Luoho Supreme God King shouted angrily. He locked his divine senses on the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor and slashed out 2 streaks of blood-red light. Just in time. The Gold Origin Dragon Emperor shouted as well. He wielded the sky-turning rod with both hands and brandished it. Bam! 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 The 2 upper-level God Kings exchanged blows in the sky. The sky was filled with divine lights and deafening explosions. The incomparably violent shockwave carried with it billions of shards of divine light and shot out in all directions, blasting the surrounding mountain range into ruins. After the 2 exchanged blows, they were both pushed back 100 miles by the violent shockwaves. However, no one was injured. Instead, their battle intent and ferocity were aroused. They flew further into the sky to fight a battle from afar. Seeing the 2 upper-level God Kings flying away and disappearing into the horizon, the heartless Supreme God King and the War Dragon King hurriedly chased after them to help the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor. However, they had just flown 100 miles when a figure suddenly appeared in front of them and blocked their path. I am your opponent. Along with a sudden cold shout, Ji Tianqing, whose robes were as white as snow, appeared in front of the 2 powerhouses. His left hand was behind his back and his right hand was holding a sword. He was exuding sword intent and murderous intent. He was like a peerless god of death. At this moment, his divine power was condensed to the maximum. His aura was at its peak and he was far stronger than the heartless Supreme God King and the War Dragon King. The 2 experts were shocked and looked at him in disbelief. They couldn't help but exclaim. You are a upper-level God King. You were severely injured by me at the entrance of the Xuanji Grotto Heaven. Now, you are a upper-level God King. How is this possible? As far as the Battle Dragon King knew, Long Tian, who had appeared out of nowhere, was merely a high God King. And the heartless Supreme God King even humiliated and injured Ji Tianqing personally a year ago. Therefore, he didn't take Ji Tianqing seriously at all. However, the 2 of them didn't expect Ji Tianqing to become an upper-level God King. This was too terrifying. There were only 3 upper-level God Kings in the entire Stellar Source continent. Moreover, 2 of them were born in the past 1,000 years. Who would have thought that a 4th upper-level God King would appear now? Taking advantage of the moment when the heartless Supreme God King and the War Dragon King were stunned, Ji Tianqing attacked without hesitation. He didn't care about the reputation of upper-level God King, and didn't think of taking the opportunity to act cool. He just didn't want to miss this excellent opportunity and used his ultimate killing move without hesitation. Sword of Extermination. At this moment, Ji Tianqing absorbed the 5 elements realm power and slashed out with all his might. A holy golden sword light that was 10,000 feet long descended from the sky and slashed at the heartless Supreme God King. Chapter 37:30. Ji Tianqing was not magnanimous. On the contrary, he was very vengeful. Back then, he headed to Xuanji Grotto Heaven, wanting to pay a visit to the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor to inquire about Heartless. In the end, not only was he blocked outside the entrance by the Heartless Divine King, he was even severely injured. From that moment onwards, he remembered this deep-seated hatred and swore to kill the Heartless Divine King one day. And now, it was the moment for him to take revenge. Hence, this sword of his slash was aimed at the Heartless Divine King, and not the Battle Dragon King. The 100,000-foot-long golden light greatsword contained more than 230 laws and divine marks, its power berserk to the extreme. The sky was instantly slashed apart, splitting open a massive ravine, revealing the pitch-black void. And the space around the Heartless Divine King was confined, making him unable to move an inch, let alone teleport to dodge. The great sword had yet to arrive, and the peerlessly horrifying sword intent already suppressed the Heartless Divine King, filling him with fear, his divine power sluggish. Even though the Heartless Divine King was only stunned for an instant before being startled awake. But under his fear, he could not escape at all, let alone retreat unscathed. In a quarter of an instant, he instinctively made the correct reaction. He erupted his divine power to the limit, holding the high-grade king-class divine sword with both hands, blocking above his head. At the same time, he tried his best to tilt his head to the side. This way, even if he was severely injured, he would not be cleaved in half by a sword and die on the spot. The reality was indeed as he wished. Boom! Crack! Following an earth-shaking, world-shaking loud bang, the golden swordlight that was resplendent like the scorching sun cleaved the Heartless Divine King with a loud bang. That all-conquering swordlight actually cut his divine sword in half tyrannically. Even though his divine sword was the same as the Burial of Heaven sword, both high-grade king-class. But this Armageddon sword move was condensed from the power of the world, its power unbelievably powerful. The Heartless Divine King's divine sword broke on the spot, collapsing and flying out. Fortunately, the divine sword was cut in half, neutralizing more than half of the Armageddon sword's power, its speed also slowed down. When the Armageddon sword cleaved him, he already tilted his head, avoiding the fatal blow. The resplendent swordlight cleaved his right shoulder, severing his right arm on the spot. The wound on his shoulder was flat and smooth, revealing his dark golden bone. Divine blood was gushing out from it. The incomparably violent impact sent Divine King Heartless flying, tumbling 100 miles away. Although his right arm had been chopped off and his body was heavily injured, he was still able to fight back. Heartless Divine King had an arm chopped off and was blasted flying 100 miles. He had just consumed a divine pill and was currently circulating to deploy the medicinal strength, suppressing his injuries and recovering his divine power. He did not expect that the 3 colleagues failed to trap Ji Tianqing and instead let Ji Tianqing chase after them. Heartless Divine King jumped in fright and hurriedly stopped circulating, teleporting away. His lifeblood divine sword was already severed. How could he block Ji Tianqing's assault barehanded? Whoosh! Heartless Divine King retreated abnormally decisively, actually dodging Ji Tianqing's assault and teleporting 1,000 miles away. Ji Tianqing's sword stabbed empty air. He was not discouraged in the slightest and also teleported 1,000 miles to chase after. Heartless Divine King, you're dead for sure today. Don't even think about escaping. Ji Tianqing locked onto his divine soul aura and charged in front of him once more, brandishing his sword and slashing repeatedly. Seeing him so overbearing, his aura fierce, Heartless Divine King naturally knew the reason. But now that it came to this, it was also impossible for him to plead for mercy in numbers. He could only dodge in a sorry state and cast spells to resist. Swoosh! 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 Ji Tianqing's sword art was astonishingly fast, unleashing 3 moves in an instant, slashing out sword lights that filled the sky. Each streak of sword light contained laws, divine power, and heaven-reaching sword intent, berserk and tyrannical to the extreme. The sky in a radius of 10,000 miles was sliced into shreds by the sword lights, revealing countless void rifts. Heartless Divine King dodged abnormally hard and was stabbed by the sword lights very soon. Fresh blood splattered all over his body, adding several bloody holes. Such an outcome made him understand that blindly dodging would not work. Hence, he could only bring out a backup divine artifact and block Ji Tianqing's assault with all his might. This divine artifact was a 2-foot-long short sword. It was dark purple in color all over, shrouded in a terrifying sanguine light. Of course, this was also a high-grade king-level divine artifact. But compared to his lifeblood divine sword, the power and grade were somewhat weaker. Even if he resisted with all his might, contending with Ji Tianqing, he was suppressed from start to finish until he retreated repeatedly, his injuries worsening continuously. He pinned his hopes on the Battle Dragon King, Qin Yu, and Tan Yu, 3 people, being able to rush over to help. But the 3 people were besieged by Ji Tianqing's 7 clones and could barely fend for themselves. How could they still have the qualifications to help him? He looked towards the west again and saw those 10 high-ranking divine kings rushing over, revealing a hopeful look. But Hu Xinyue and the 3 myriad Demon Alliance elders went up to greet them, delaying their footsteps. What was even more puzzling was that a rock giant and 4 divine king powerhouses appeared out of nowhere and also joined the battle. Both sides started fighting high up in the sky. No one could help Heartless Divine King. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 37-31. The 5 god kings that appeared out of nowhere were naturally Ji Tianqing's trusted aides. The rock giant was Yank. The other 4 were Chao Qingyu, Baifeng, Yun Yao, and Ji Ku. Even though only Baifeng was an upper-level god king among the 5 while the other 4 were middle-level god kings. However, Ji Tianqing had already prepared weapons and equipment for them. Moreover, Yun Yao and Ji Ku were gifted and could kill enemies of a higher level. The 5 of them, together with Hu Xinyue and the 3 elders of the Myriad Demon Alliance, made a total of 9 people. Although they couldn't defeat the 10 upper-level god kings of the Xuanji Grotto Heaven easily, they wouldn't be defeated in a short period of time. Hence, the situation was in a stalemate. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and the rest were fighting against the 10 upper-level god kings in the sky. The battle was extremely intense. Figures flashed in the sky and divine light danced in the sky, covering a radius of 30,000 miles. The battlefield was in a state of chaos, and deafening explosions were ceaselessly sounding out. Shockwaves that could destroy the heavens and the earth burst out and blasted the lofty mountains and lofty ridges in all directions into ruins. Meanwhile, Ji Tianqing and his 7 doppelgangers were fighting against the Heartless God King, War Dragon King, and the rest respectively. They actually had the upper hand. In other words, he was fighting against the 4 experts alone and he could still suppress them. Only a peak God King could achieve such terrifying strength. Of course, it had to be the peak God King's original body. Doppelgangers couldn't do it. For example, Luoho Divine King and Golden Source Dragon Emperor couldn't do it. Heaven-piercing sword. Dragon Elephant Divine Fist. Bam! 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 Ji Tianqing was valiant and ferocious as he attacked the heartless God King ferociously. The heartless God King was in a fluster under the bombardment of sword lights and divine skills. He dodged left and right and he was in a very sorry state. As time passed, his injuries worsened rapidly. His body was dyed dark gold by blood. He was completely suppressed by Ji Tianqing. His injuries were getting worse and his strength was getting weaker. If there was no miracle, he would be killed by Ji Tianqing in at most a quarter of an hour. Anticipating this outcome, the heartless divine king made up his mind. He had to escape. Even if he fled at the last moment and caused the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor's plan to fail, he was not willing to die here. At this time, Ji Tianqing rushed over again and slashed out a huge divine sword with all his might. The thoughtless divine king no longer blindly dodged. He actually pushed the protective divine light to the extreme. Both of his hands held the dark purple short sword horizontally in front of him, slashing out the sharpest light blade. Boom! The giant divine sword slashed down with a loud bang, instantly shattering a few light blades, and then struck the purple short sword. Fragments of divine light burst out. Cracks and gaps appeared on the purple short sword, and it was sent flying. The divine greatsword's might was weakened by more than half, and it struck the thoughtless divine king's protective divine light. Crack! A hole had also appeared in the protective divine light that was so condensed that it was almost tangible. Dense cracks had also appeared on it. The thoughtless divine king was struck by the violent power. Blood immediately spurted out from his 7 orifices, and he let out a groan. At the same time, he was also sent flying by the terrifying impact. He was sent flying hundreds of miles away at the speed of light. On the surface, it looked like he was unable to block the sword. He was sent flying by Ji Tianqing, and he was severely injured. But in reality, he had already neutralized 80% of the giant sword's might. The injuries he suffered were not serious. After flying 300 miles, he calmed down his divine power and instantly revealed his original form. Swoosh! With a flash of golden light, the thoughtless divine king turned into a 3-legged golden crow divine bird that was as big as a mountain. Originally, the golden crow was a majestic divine bird that was as dazzling as the scorching sun. But it was severely injured. Its body was covered with hideous wounds that were so deep that its bones could be seen. The most obvious wound was that more than half of its golden wings had been cut off, leaving only a row of wing bones. It looked rather hideous. Caw! The thoughtless divine king roared angrily. He exploded with his fastest speed and sped towards the west, escaping towards the exit of the Sky River Mystery Realm. At this moment, in a dangerous situation, no matter how angry and humiliated he was, he could only forcefully endure it. Since he decided to escape, he would not drag his feet. He would not take another look at Ji Tianqing, and it was even more impossible to say any harsh words. That was just a waste of time. Whoosh! The golden crow divine bird turned into a streak of golden light, streaking across the sky like lightning, fleeing tens of thousands of miles in an instant. Such terrifying speed, only the golden rock divine bird of the same realm could achieve it. Very clearly, the thoughtless divine king did not hesitate to consume his power and lifespan in order to escape. He used his trump card ultimate skill, forcefully increasing his escape speed. In just a blink of an eye, Ji Tianqing was left behind by him 20,000 miles away. Damn it! Ji Tianqing frowned fiercely, cursing with a gloomy expression. Even though he used his teleportation divine ability, chasing after 10,000 miles in one step. But the distance between the two always maintained around 20,000 miles. In a short period of time, it was very difficult for him to catch up to the thoughtless divine king, let alone intercept and kill him. Hence, after Ji Tianqing chased for 50,000 miles, he decisively used another trump card ultimate skill. Endless Sky of Chaos. Swoosh! A white light flashed, and Ji Tianqing disappeared, merging into one with the heaven and earth within a radius of 300,000 miles. As long as he was willing, he could appear anywhere within 300,000 miles with just a thought. Such a heaven-defying divine ability, if used to travel, escape, or chase, it was even more terrifying than teleportation or teleportation. Whoosh! In the next instant, Ji Tianqing crossed 20,000 miles out of thin air, appearing in front of the golden crow divine bird, 1,000 feet away. The golden crow divine bird was fleeing for its life, burning with anxiety and anxiety. Seeing Ji Tianqing relentlessly chasing after it, following behind for 20,000 miles, it was filled with anger. However, before it could react, it sensed a weak spatial fluctuation in the sky 1,000 feet in front of it. Could it be that he teleported here? This thought flashed through the golden crow divine bird's mind, and it was extremely shocked. It subconsciously activated its divine power, forming a shield in front of it, and changed its direction, wanting to avoid Ji Tianqing. Unfortunately, the distance between them was too close. It was only 1,000 feet. With its speed of teleportation, this distance was not even 1/10 of a second. Therefore, it did not have time to form a shield or change its direction before it crashed into Ji Tianqing. Swoosh! Then, an unbelievable scene appeared. The golden crow divine bird and Ji Tianqing collided, but there was no loud noise, and neither of them was sent flying. It was as if Ji Tianqing was invisible and did not exist. The golden crow divine bird passed through him without any hindrance. However, after it had rushed out for 10,000 miles, it felt an excruciating pain in its organs, and its energy was quickly dissipating. Then, its speed decreased drastically, and it gradually stopped in the sky. It slowly lowered its head to look, only to find that there was a hideous bloody hole in its chest. The bloody hole extended from its chest to its back, cutting off its heart meridian and destroying its internal organs. More than 10,000 miles behind it, Ji Tianqing was standing in the sky, unharmed. He was still in the posture of a bow, holding the sword of burial of heaven with both hands. His body was covered in divine light, and not a drop of blood was on him. Chapter 37-32. The golden crow's eyes widened, revealing a look of disbelief and fear. It instantly understood. Ji Tianqing was not sent flying, but pierced through its divine body with his sword, destroying its physical body in one strike. It was not that it pierced through Ji Tianqing, but Ji Tianqing pierced through its heart. It actually took the initiative to collide with this fatal stab. As a rare top-notch assassin in the world, it had always been the one to assassinate others, but now it was actually assassinated by someone else's sword. How ironic. Coo! Coo coo, the golden crow's throat emitted drum-like panting sounds, and its body began to tremble. Its body's vitality rapidly declined, and it gradually lost control of its body, finding it difficult to even stay in the sky. At this time, Ji Tianqing crossed the sky with his sword and landed in front of it. Heartless Divine King, I heard that you are hailed as the #1 assassin in the astral source continent. What I want to say is that when one cultivates the divine Tao to the extreme, assassins, swordsmen, and bladesmen are all the same. The only thing that distinguishes the strong and the weak is the use of power, laws, and divine ability techniques. Ji Tianqing looked at the golden crow with a calm expression, and said indifferently. Your divine body is destroyed, and only your divine spark is left, accept your fate. As his voice fell, the golden crow's vitality was completely cut off, and its mountain-like body fell from the sky. Endless golden divine blood gushed out from the bloody hole in its chest like a flood that had broken through a dam, sprinkling all over the sky. Under such circumstances, the heartless divine king had no other choice but to leave his divine spark and continue to flee. Accept his fate and wait for death. That did not exist. Swoosh! A basin-sized dark golden diamond-shaped crystal flew out of the golden crow's body, and fled into the distance as fast as a stream of light. Even if it knew that Ji Tianqing was powerful and that it might not be able to escape alive, it still had to flee with all its might. However, Ji Tianqing was already prepared. If he could let it escape once, how could he let it escape a second time? Swoosh! The thoughtless divine king's godhead had just escaped 10,000 miles away when the surrounding sky suddenly lit up with golden divine light. The dazzling golden light instantly converged and condensed into a dragon claw as large as a mountain, which suddenly clenched tightly. Crack! Following a crisp sound, space froze. The heartless divine king's godhead was also captured by the dragon claw and held tightly in the palm of his hand. Ah! Long Tian! You goddamn bastard, even if I die, I won't let you off. The furious roar of the heartless divine king came from within the divine deity. His tone was incomparably venomous and filled with monstrous hatred. Even though it was bound by the heaven-capturing dragon claw, it still struggled with all its might. It even wanted to detonate its own godhead and perish together with Ji Tianqing. However, Ji Tianqing activated the power of the heaven-mending orb, firmly suppressing it and quickly devouring its divine power. As a result, the more furious it was and the more it tried to explode, the faster the heaven-mending orb devoured it. Ji Tianqing flew over with an indifferent expression, removed the heaven-capturing dragon claw, and held its godhead with both hands. His palms flickered with a faint white light, activating the power of the heaven-mending orb to accelerate the devouring of the godhead. He turned a deaf ear to the heartless divine king's roars and curses, and couldn't be bothered to care. There was no need to waste words with a person who was bound to die. Long Tian. If you dare to kill me, the Dragon Emperor will definitely not let you off. Ah! I am the protector of the Golden Crow clan. If you kill me, the Golden Crow clan will be irreconcilable with you. Just wait for the revenge of the Golden Crow clan and the mysterious grotto. Not only you, the myriad demon alliance will also be annihilated. The heartless divine king's divine power was rapidly depleting. His emotions were filled with fear and despair as he cursed with a venomous tone. He brought up the Golden Crow clan and the mysterious grotto one after another, threatening Ji Tianqing fiercely. He only hoped that Ji Tianqing would be wary, so that he would have a chance of survival. But very unfortunately, no matter what he said, Ji Tianqing ignored it all. Along with the passage of time, the heartless divine king's godhead gradually shrunk. His power also weakened rapidly, resulting in his consciousness becoming muddled and blurry as well. The roars and curses became softer and softer. After 7 minutes, the wash-basin-sized godhead was mostly devoured. The heartless divine king's consciousness gradually collapsed, and he finally fainted. Only then did Ji Tianqing cast his divine ability Ultimate Skill, crushing the godhead to pieces, shattering it into several dozen fragments. Then, he put away the heartless divine king's godhead fragments into his spatial ring, turned around, and rushed back to the battlefield. The heartless divine king perished just like that. To date, this was the strongest person that Ji Tianqing personally killed. That's right, the heartless divine king's strength was even a little stronger than Xue Shang and Tao Yongsheng. But Ji Tianqing still killed him effortlessly. This battle made him greatly reassured in his heart, finally verifying his combat strength. Just as he said previously, he already had 80% of his peak back then. Swoosh! Before long, Ji Tianqing returned to the battlefield. Previously, this region with a radius of 100,000 miles was all towering mountains and precipitous ridges, as well as a sea of forests. But now, after the impact of the aftermath of many god kings fighting, this region had long turned into ruins. Looking as far as the eye could see, the ground was shattered, a stretch of yellow soil ruins, filled with ravines and deep pits. Between heaven and earth, apart from the dazzling divine art light and shadows, there was smoke and dust that lingered and did not dissipate. The great battle was still ongoing. The first thing that Ji Tianqing saw was Yun Yao, Ji Ku, Hu Xinyue, and the rest, still resisting the attacks of the 10 god kings. Both sides had already fought for 45 minutes. Profound Secrets Grotto Heaven's 10 high-ranking god kings finally gained the upper hand. Ji Ku, Yun Yao, and the rest of the 9 gradually fell into a disadvantage, being beaten until they continuously retreated in defeat, exhausted from resisting. However, their retreat was steady and not scattered, and there were not too many casualties either. At this rate, they would be able to hold on for at least an hour before they were defeated. In addition, both sides were injured, light or heavy. Many people's hair was disheveled, and their clothes were stained with blood. They looked very miserable. For example, Hu Xinyue, Ao Jinying, Yank, and Bai Feng, who were leading the charge, were all covered with wounds and bloody holes. They looked to be heavily injured. Yun Yao and Ji Ku were also injured, but it was not fatal, and their combat strength was not affected too much. The two of them became more and more courageous as they fought, and they even gradually entered the zone, unleashing unbelievable combat strength that exceeded their normal limits. It could not be helped. Ever since Ji Tianqing ascended to the divine realm, they had basically been cultivating in seclusion in the distorted spacetime. In so many years, they rarely had the chance to fight, and ultimately, they lacked the tempering of blood and fire. Today, they were able to fight without any scruples. This was what they had been longing for. It was also an excellent opportunity for them to gain experience. However, Ji Tianqing did not dare to let them continue to be suppressed when he saw this scene. After all, Yank, Bai Feng, Hu Xinyue, and the rest's injuries had worsened, and their lives were in danger. Ji Tianqing did not hesitate to rescue them, and attacked the 10 Profound Secrets Grotto Heaven's God Kings. Infinite Sky of Chaos. Since it was an ambush, he naturally had to use his strongest assassination ability to end the battle quickly. A white light flashed, and he disappeared. In the next instant, he traversed 20,000 miles and appeared on the other side of the battlefield, behind a high-ranking God King. Chapter 37-33. This high-level God King was the commander of the Golden Dragon Guards under Qin Yu. This person was a peak 7th Heaven God King. He had fought bravely in the previous battle and was heavily injured. Under the cover of his companions, he took the opportunity to retreat to the edge of the battlefield. He took a divine elixir to suppress his injuries. He originally planned to suppress his internal injuries and recover his divine power before rejoining the battle. However, he did not expect death to befall him just as he was trying to calm his chaotic divine power. Whoosh! Along with a slight spatial fluctuation, Ji Tianqing appeared behind him out of thin air. Without the slightest bit of hesitation or sloppiness, he directly thrust his sword towards the back of his head. The two were less than 10 meters apart. Ji Tianqing's sword was as fast as a flash of light and as powerful as a thunderbolt. The formless sword will of heaven shrouded this person's entire body and immobilized him. This God King instantly woke up and realized the danger of death. He widened his eyes in shock. He wanted to teleport away, but he realized that the space was frozen. He wanted to twist his body to avoid the fatal sword, but he realized that his body was immobilized and could not move. Under such circumstances, death was a foregone conclusion. Pfff, with a dull sound, the sword of burial of heaven easily pierced through the back of this person's head. The tip of the sword emerged from his forehead. The pitch-black, sharp tip of the sword dripped with blood. This God King's sea of consciousness and Godhead had been shattered by the sword. He died on the spot. The commander of the Golden Dragon Guards, a peak 7th Heaven God King expert, was killed by Ji Tianqing in a single strike. He did not even have the chance to resist or dodge. Even the heartless God King, who was known as the continent's #1 assassin, could not do such a terrifying assassination. When Ji Tianqing retrieved the sword of burial of heaven, he flicked his wrist and the tip of the sword flicked. Dozens of shattered Godhead fragments followed the sword of burial of heaven out of the head and into his palm. He then took this person's interspatial ring and put it into the ring along with the Godhead fragments. Then, his figure flashed and disappeared again. He blended into the 300,000 miles of heaven and earth and secretly observed the situation on the battlefield, looking for an opportunity to assassinate. Not only did he observe the battle between the God Kings, he also observed the battle between the 7 clones, the Battle Dragon King, Qin Yu, and Tan Yu. To his surprise, Battle Dragon King and the other 2 had been besieged by the 7 clones for so long, but not only had they not fallen into a disadvantageous position, they had even turned the tables. Both Qin Yu and Tan Yu suffered heavy injuries and turned into blood men. War Dragon King's injuries were also very miserable. His hair was disheveled, and his armor was shattered. He looked very miserable. However, the Battle Dragon King wielded a divine diagram and a divine spear. He was actually very valiant. 2 of his 7 doppelgangers had already been destroyed. Only 5 doppelgangers were still fighting. Avatars were different from avatars. The doppelganger was formed by a wisp of divine consciousness and vigorous divine power. Even if it was destroyed, it would not be a great loss. However, the external incarnation was different. It required a strand of one's soul to be split off and refined with a few tens of types of rare materials, and it could move about on its own. A high-quality avatar was almost equivalent to an extra life. If it was destroyed, it would be a disastrous loss. Even though Ji Tianxing did not feel the pinch of losing 2 of his doppelgangers, he was still a little anxious. If this dragged on, all of his doppelgangers would be destroyed. At that time, Battle Dragon King and the others would rush over to help. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and the others would definitely be in danger. Therefore, Ji Tianxing did not hesitate anymore. He continued to attack the divine kings of the Xuanji Grotto heaven. Swoosh! A Golden Dragon Guard commander was charging forward bravely. He waved his divine saber and slashed out a sky full of saber lights. He used his ultimate divine ability to attack Yank. Yank, who was thousands of feet tall and looked like a mountain, was fighting a bloody battle. He attacked crazily. However, he was definitely not the Golden Dragon Guard commander's match. He was about to be injured by the saber lights. At that moment, Ji Tianxing suddenly appeared beside the Golden Dragon Guard commander and stabbed him with his sword. The 2 of them were less than 10 feet apart. The Golden Dragon Guard commander's attention was all on Yank. He only wanted to kill Yank with one slash. He did not expect someone to appear beside him out of nowhere and attack him. Therefore, when he sensed the space ripple beside him and saw a young man in a white robe appear out of nowhere, he had no time to dodge or escape. Pfft, another dull thud was heard. The Burial of Heaven sword was as fast as a flash of light. It accurately pierced the Golden Dragon Guard commander's temple and came out from the other side. The Golden Dragon Guard commander's body stiffened on the spot. Life drained from his eyes, and he died on the spot. As Ji Tianxing retrieved the Burial of Heaven sword, he flicked his sword again and took out a dozen godhead fragments. Then, he reached out his left hand and took the person's interspatial ring. He put away the godhead fragments and interspatial ring. His figure became blurry again as he merged with heaven and earth. The entire process happened in a flash. It was so fast that no one could react. He attacked, killed, kept his sword, and took away the godhead fragments and interspatial ring. He did all of this in one go. After killing 2 high-level divine kings in a flash, Ji Tianxing started to look for his 3rd target. At this time, the 8 surviving divine kings noticed something strange. Seeing 2 of their companions killed by Long Tian, the 8 divine kings retreated in fear. They did not dare to turn around and run. They retreated step by step and gathered together. The 8 of them formed a circle and formed a battle formation. They were on guard against each other. This was a smart move and the best way to deal with this. For a while, Ji Tianxing could not find a chance to attack. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, Wu Xinyue, and the others could not attack by force. They could only take the opportunity to rest and recuperate. It looked like the stalemate was going to continue for a while. Ji Tianqing was worried about the battle between his 5 clones and the Battle Dragon King and the others. However, he did not want to wait any longer. Since he could not assassinate them by surprise, he appeared above the 8 Divine Kings and used his ultimate killer move to attack. Sword of Apocalypse. As soon as he appeared, he held the Burial of Heaven sword tightly with both hands and slashed down with all his might. Swoosh! Suddenly, a divine golden sword that was tens of thousands of feet long slashed through the sky with the power to destroy everything. As the divine golden sword slashed down, 100-mile-long crack appeared in the sky, revealing a pitch-black void. Before the divine golden sword arrived, the boundless sword intent had already enveloped the 8 divine kings, causing them to be filled with fear. At this moment, the 8 divine kings looked up at the sky with fear. They looked at the crack in the void and the sword of apocalypse that was slashing down from above. They knew very well that Ji Tianqing's attack was to force them to scatter. Once they fled pathetically, they would definitely scatter and be killed by Ji Tianqing one by one. Therefore, the 8 divine kings wielded their Kenshin weapons in unison. They worked together to use their ultimate skills to block the sword of apocalypse. In just an instant, they worked together to form a divine light barrier that enveloped the 8 of them. Immediately after, they released all kinds of divine techniques and slashed at the sword of apocalypse. They did not want to destroy the divine golden sword. They only wanted to weaken the power of the sword of apocalypse. Boom! Crack! In the next moment, the divine golden sword slashed down, shattering the divine techniques and slashing at the divine light barrier. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 37-34. A huge explosion sounded in the sky, spreading for thousands of miles. The seemingly thick and solid barrier of divine light was actually cleaved in half by the divine golden sword and sent flying. The violent impact, mixed with countless fragments of divine light, splashed in all directions. The power of the divine golden sword was naturally weakened by half. Immediately after, when it struck the God Kings, it was also not as violent as before. However, 50% of the power of the Sword of Annihilation was enough to kill a few God Kings. Bang! 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 2 rather unlucky high-level divine kings were chopped into pieces on the spot by the divine golden sword. Not only were their divine bodies shattered, their divine cores were also cleaved into pieces and they died. There were also 3 god kings who were too close and brushed past the divine golden sword and were also struck by the violent sword intent. The 3 of them were sent flying, the armor on their bodies shattered, their divine bodies covered in wounds, dark red divine blood constantly gushing out. Thump! Thump! The 3 divine kings flew 100 miles away and fell into the ruins. They smashed into the ground with a few muffled thuds and raised dust into the air. Other than these 5 unlucky god kings, the other 3 god kings were relatively luckier. They were only sent flying by the violent impact and did not suffer any serious injuries. After retreating dozens of miles, they circulated their energy and suppressed the chaotic divine power, returning to normal. However, they were unable to calm down and were still filled with shock. They looked at Ji Tianqing with eyes full of fear. It was only at this moment that they personally experienced how formidable Ji Tianqing's strength was. If not for the mission and orders, they would have turned and fled long ago. Cough cough, the 3 heavily injured god kings crawled out of the ruins and flew into the sky, coughing up blood violently. They had no time to consider the situation of their companions. They all took out healing divine pills and hurriedly consumed them, circulating their energy to suppress their injuries. And at this time, the invisible Ji Tianqing quietly appeared again. Swoosh! With a weak spatial ripple, he appeared behind an injured god king. This god king was heavily injured and his divine power was in chaos. The sharpness of his consciousness was also greatly reduced. When he sensed the abnormality and realized that something was wrong, death had already arrived. PFFF, another muffled sound that represented death rang out. The pitch-black sword of burial of heaven silently penetrated his head, destroying his sea of consciousness and godhead. The entire process was as fast as lightning, but there was no dazzling brilliance. It was rather low-key. However, the Tao of assassination was exactly like this. It only pursued speed, accuracy, and ruthlessness, and it never required gorgeous moves or gorgeous shadows. After killing the deity king with a single strike, Ji Tianqing quickly collected the deity king's godhead fragment and space ring before vanishing again. At this moment, there were still 5 god kings alive. 2 of them were severely injured, while the other 3 were fine. However, when they saw their companions being assassinated one after another, and personally witnessed Ji Tianqing's mysterious assassination technique, they were already scared out of their wits. All the missions were thrown out of his mind. He did not even care about the dignity of the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor. They only wanted to live. They didn't want to die under Ji Tianqing's sword. Therefore, the 5 god kings turned around and fled without hesitation. They all used their fastest speed to escape to the Mystic Realm's exit. Although the main force and top experts of the mystical Grotto Heaven were in the Heavenly River Mystic Realm. However, they knew that there were experts guarding the Mystic Realm's exit. Even if that expert was not a lackey of the mystical Grotto Heaven, he was still loyal to the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor and would definitely carry out his mission loyally. As long as they escaped to the Mystic Realm's exit, they would definitely be able to escape. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing hurriedly swung the sword of burial of heaven and slashed out 36 dazzling sword lights that shot towards the 5 god kings at lightning speed. He did not want to kill the 5 god kings in one move. He only wanted to stop them, injure them, and delay their escape. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! The sword lights streaked across the sky, covering thousands of miles in an instant and intercepting the 5 god kings in an instant. 3 of them were lightly injured and reacted quickly. Before the sword lights reached them, the 3 of them slowed down their escape speed and used all their strength to defend themselves. Following a series of dull thuds, the 3 god kings were sent flying by the sword lights. Blood splattered everywhere in the air. Fortunately, they were only severely injured and did not lose their lives. Still in shock, the 3 of them ignored their injuries and fled even faster as if their lives depended on it. As for the other 2 god kings, they were already severely injured and their strength had decreased greatly. When the sword lights filled the sky, the 2 of them did not even have time to dodge and were sliced into pieces by the violent sword lights. Blood rained down from the sky. The 2 god kings were smashed into pieces, and their godhead fragments were also scattered in the sky. After a breath, Ji Tianqing flew over. He waved his hand and picked up the 2 godhead fragments and interspatial rings before turning to leave. He had already injured the 3 surviving god kings. There was no need for him to waste time chasing after them. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, Hu Xinyue, and the others had already recuperated and were chasing after the 3 god kings with all their might. There were a total of 9 god king experts chasing after the 3 injured god kings. There was no suspense in the outcome. And now, Ji Tianqing was most concerned about the battle between the 5 clones and the Battle Dragon King. Secondly, what was the outcome of the battle between the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor and the Luoho God King? Unfortunately, the 2 peak god kings had already shifted their battlefield. They flew hundreds of thousands of miles away and entered the depths of the Sky River Secret Realm. Ji Tianqing's consciousness could only cover a radius of 100,000 miles. He could not see any traces of the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor or the Luoho God King. He could only look at the dazzling divine light that kept shining in the depths of the secret realm. He was sure that the 2 peak god kings were still fighting and there was no clear victor. When Ji Tianqing crossed thousands of miles in a single step and rushed back to his battlefield, the situation in front of him stunned him. Previously, he had observed that the Battle Dragon King, Qin Yu, and Tan Yu were severely injured, but 2 of their clones were destroyed. They were fighting against 5 clones. Now that 100 breaths time had passed, the battle situation had changed again. Another 2 of the 5 clones had been destroyed. The remaining 3 were also riddled with injuries. As for the Battle Dragon King, Qinyu, and Tanyu, they were only more severely injured. They could still fight. If they continued fighting for 100 breaths time, they would definitely be able to destroy the remaining 3 clones. However, when they saw Ji Tianqing kill several God Kings consecutively, they were extremely shocked. When Ji Tianqing turned and flew back, they actually abandoned the 3 clones and turned to flee without hesitation. They clearly knew that if they continued fighting, Ji Tianqing would kill them before they could destroy Ji Tianqing's clones. Facing such a powerful demon, if they did not flee, would they be waiting for death? However, the Battle Dragon King and the other 2 did not flee in the direction of the Secret Realm's exit. That would only lead them to Ji Tianqing. Instead, they fled in the opposite direction. They fled towards the depths of the Secret Realm and headed straight for the battle between the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor and the Luoho God King. Chapter 37-35. Without a doubt, the Battle Dragon King and the other 2 had made the right choice. If they had fled towards the exit of the Mystic Realm like the other upper godly kings, even if they could avoid Ji Tianqing, they would still be surrounded by Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and the others. Yun Yao and the others only needed to delay them for a moment, and Ji Tianqing would arrive and kill them one by one. If they fled into the depths of the Mystic Realm, Ji Tianqing would not be able to catch up to them in a short period of time. Of course, this was not the only reason why the Battle Dragon King and the other 2 had fled into the depths of the Mystic Realm. They knew that the battle had already progressed to this stage. With just the 3 of them, there was no way they could turn the situation around. The only one who could turn the situation around was the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor. Unfortunately, the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor and Luoho Supreme Being were too far away. They were still engaged in a fierce battle, and there was no clear victor. The Battle Dragon King and the other 2 wanted to reinforce the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor as soon as possible. As long as they helped the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor kill Luoho Supreme Being, victory would be assured. Even if Ji Tianqing chased after them, the 3 of them and the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor could easily kill Ji Tianqing if they joined forces. At that time, Luoho Supreme Being and Ji Tianqing would both be dead. Hu Xinyue, Yin Yao, and the others would be fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. Unfortunately, the Battle Dragon King and the other 2 had a good plan, but they had neglected the most important point. On the surface, the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor and Luoho Supreme Being were the strongest, but in reality, they were only avatars. They only had 50% of their original body's strength. In the Sky River Mystic Realm, the strongest person was Ji Tianqing. Infinite Sky of Chaos. When Ji Tianqing saw the Battle Dragon King and the other 2 fleeing with instantaneous movement, he did not hesitate to execute his ultimate move. This was the 3rd time he had used this ultimate move today. His body glowed with white light. When he disappeared, his face was pale, and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. After all, the Infinite Sky of Chaos was too powerful and heaven-defying. Every time he used it, he would use up a huge amount of divine power. Using it several times in a short period of time would cause great harm to his mind and body. However, in this situation, Ji Tianqing had no choice but to endure the pain and forcibly use it. Shua! He merged with heaven and earth, instantly covering an area of 300,000 miles. Everything in this area was under his watch. It was as if he was everywhere, and could clearly see the situation in every corner of this area. He could clearly see the wounds on Battle Dragon King, Qinyu, and Tanyu's bodies, as well as their expressions and gazes. He could also see the 3's escape routes and secretly communicate with each other through telepathy. After all, the 3 of them were renowned experts and wise strategists. They were the right-hand men of the Gold Origin Dragon Emperor. Even when they were running for their lives, they didn't forget to discuss countermeasures and their next plan of action. Schwa. Without any hesitation, Ji Tianqing instantly crossed 50,000 miles and appeared beside Tan Yu out of thin air. He appeared without a sound. His body and the sword of burial of heaven were dull and unadorned. However, his speed was extremely fast. It was simply impossible to see him with the naked eye. Swish. The way he assassinated Tan Yu was also extremely concise, straightforward, and swift. There wasn't any extra movement. It was another sure-kill stab. As usual, it was fast, accurate, and ruthless. He had unleashed the art of assassination to the extreme. Tan Yu was also a top-notch assassin who was proficient in disguise and assassination. However, Ji Tianqing chose him as the target because he was the weakest. He was only at the 8th level of the Divine King realm. Moreover, he was already severely injured. His body was covered in blood, and his hair was messy. He was in a sorry state. Since Ji Tianqing wanted to assassinate him, he had to aim for a one-hit kill. He couldn't waste any time. If he assassinated Qin Yu and Battle Dragon King, there was a chance that they would fail and escape. In that case, he wouldn't be able to catch them off guard and would even waste time. When the silent sword stabbed towards him at almost the speed of light, Tan Yu's body tensed up. He was scared out of his wits. He felt a strong sense of impending death. His heart stopped beating, and his eyes widened in despair. There was no need to analyze or think. He knew what was going on instinctively. At the same time, he knew that he couldn't dodge this stab. He would definitely die. However, he wasn't willing to die like this. His death was worthless. Even if he was going to die, he had to do something. Thus, he used his transformation divine ability. His body shrunk by 10 times, and he became a 1-foot-tall dwarf. The smaller the body, the more nimble it was to move within a square inch, and the harder it was to be stabbed. At the same time, he used all his divine power to stab at Ji Tianqing with the dagger in his hands. The seemingly ordinary stab contained a lifetime of assassination experience. Moreover, the dagger flickered with dozens of divine patterns of laws. It contained the most violent power. Even the gloomy sky was pierced by the dagger, and a pitch-black spatial crack appeared. Tan Yu was determined to die. Even if he was killed by Ji Tianqing, he had to injure Ji Tianqing to buy time for his companions to escape. When the burial of heaven was only 1 foot away from Tan Yu, he suddenly shrunk to 1 foot tall. It looked like the burial of heaven was about to pass over his head and land on empty air. At this moment, Ji Tianqing was also a little surprised. He marveled at Tan Yu's reaction. It was fast and accurate, completely instinctive. As expected of a top-notch assassin. The method of shrinking one's body saved time and effort, and it was also very effective. However, while this method was useful for others, it was useless against Ji Tianqing. His attainments in the sword Dao and his control of the burial of heaven were simply subtle and precise. It was as if he was controlling his own fingers. In a tenth of an instant, he flipped his wrist, and the burial of heaven stabbed diagonally downwards into Tan Yu's head. Crack! With a crisp crack, the burial of heaven pierced through the top of Tan Yu's head, through his skull, and also through his sea of consciousness and godhead. Incomparably violent power and sword intent exploded in Tan Yu's head, instantly destroying his mind and godhead. Of course, Ji Tianqing's control of power and sword intent was very subtle. It only destroyed his mind and didn't spread outwards. Thus, Tan Yu's head didn't shatter or explode. It was just that his godhead shattered, his consciousness fell into darkness, and he died on the spot. The dagger in his hand also stopped in front of Ji Tianqing, only 3 feet away. It was this 3 feet distance that became a natural moat that could never be crossed. This was because he only thought of shrinking his body to save his life at the critical moment, but he forgot a very simple principle. When he shrunk his body, his arms naturally became shorter. Even if he stabbed with all his strength with the dagger, it was only 2 feet away, not even as long as the burial of heaven. Ji Tianqing could stab him to death with the burial of heaven from 5 feet away, but he couldn't touch Ji Tianqing at all. Even if the dagger shone with divine light and was covered in divine patterns of laws, it burst forth with unparalleled sharpness and stabbed Ji Tianqing. But that was divine light and invisible divine power, after all. In the end, it couldn't break through Ji Tianqing's defenses and was completely blocked. Chapter 37-36. After killing Tan Yu in one move, Ji Tianqing quickly put away his sword and snatched the divine spark fragment and spatial ring. All of his actions were done in one go like flowing water. At this time, Battle Dragon King and Qin Yu had already flown 10,000 miles away, pulling apart the distance between them. Even though the two of them had discovered Ji Tianqing and used their divine senses to see the process of him killing Tan Yu, they were still terrified. They felt grief and indignation for Tan Yu's death and wanted nothing more than to tear Ji Tianqing into pieces. However, the two of them tacitly chose to speed up and escape, not stopping at all, nor did they stop to watch or curse. For peak experts like them, their wills were as firm as a rock and they would never act on impulse. Even in the most dangerous situation, the two of them would calmly deal with it. They were very clear that even if they stopped to intercept Ji Tianqing and save Tan Yu, it would be useless. If it were them, they wouldn't be able to block Ji Tianqing's heaven-shaking stab that had been planned for a long time, let alone save Tan Yu. Rather than wasting time, they might as well take the chance to escape and not disappoint Tan Yu's dying wish. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing put away the spatial ring in divine spark fragment, turned to look at Battle Dragon King and Qin Yu's backs, and frowned. Truly too calm to the point of being heartless bastards. Their comrade was killed and they didn't even bat an eye. Ji Tianqing muttered to himself, then crossed the sky as fast as lightning, chasing after them 10,000 miles in one breath. That perfect sword attack just now had consumed a lot of his mental strength and divine power. His face was increasingly pale, and the sweat on his forehead was even denser. His strength had also decreased. Wanting to use boundless sky of turbidity again to assassinate Battle Dragon King and Qin Yu had become an extravagant hope. His internal organs and meridians had already been injured after being attacked and cut several times. If he forcefully used boundless sky of turbidity a fourth time, he would only kill 1,000 enemies and suffer 800 casualties. Therefore, he temporarily suppressed his killing intent and chased with all his might. Breath after breath passed, 10,000 miles returned to 10,000 miles, after 30 breaths of time, Battle Dragon King, Qin Yu, and Ji Tianqing had chased for 300,000 miles. The area that the three of them flew past had long been destroyed by the battle between the Golden Source Dragon Emperor and the Luoho Supreme Being. It was now a charred wasteland. Even the gloomy sky was filled with crisscrossing ravines and tens of thousands of space cracks. From the devastated land and the remnant berserk divine power in the world, the three of them could deduce how intense the battle between the two peak divine kings was. Similarly, the three of them were filled with worry and anxiety. Now, the three of them finally saw the figures of Golden Origin Dragon Emperor and Luoho Supreme Being. What made the three people very surprised was that the two peak divine kings were already not in the Milky Way mystic realm. In the area where they were fighting, the area with a radius of 50,000 miles was shattered, filled with dark cracks and holes. The terrifying void storm turned into pitch-black hurricanes, passing through the holes and cracks and madly pouring into the Sky River secret realm. Evidently, the battle between the two peak divine kings had destroyed the Sky River secret realm and destroyed the spatial barrier of the secret realm. The secret realm was originally an alternate dimension. It relied on the indestructible spatial barrier to be sandwiched between the dragon realm and the void. However, at this moment, the spatial barrier was shattered, and even the will of the heavenly Tao could not repair it. The densely packed holes and cracks in the sky showed no signs of healing. Such a scene made the Battle Dragon King and Qin Yu's hearts palpitate, and they were filled with fear and admiration. They also knew that the two peak divine kings were truly enraged and had used all their strength and means. They probably felt that the Sky River secret realm was too weak and could not withstand their ravaging. The two of them actually passed through the spatial cracks and charged into the dark void, continuing their battle in the void. Ji Tianqing, Battle Dragon King, and Qin Yu stopped in the sky that was riddled with holes and looked up at the dark outer realm. Although the Golden Source Dragon Emperor and Luoho Supreme Being were very far away from them, at least 60 to 70,000 miles away. They could no longer see the figures of the two peak divine kings clearly, and they could not see the injuries of the two experts. However, from the constant flashes of divine light in the void and the exploding divine art projections, the battle between the two peak divine kings had reached its most intense moment. Even the dim starry void was illuminated by the dazzling divine light. The dazzling five-colored divine light, mixed with the violent impact, turned into waves of shockwaves that spread out like ripples, sweeping across the void. There were also thousands of profound nomological law divine patterns, scenes of the great Tao, and divine art projections that flashed in the void. To all the Divine King experts, it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be able to watch the battle between two peak divine kings at close range. The two peak divine kings' mystiques, techniques, and understanding of nomological law divine patterns were all things that they could observe and learn from. However, it was a pity that the Battle Dragon King and Qin Yu were destined to not be able to observe and learn. Die. When the two of them slowed down and looked up at the battle in the void, Ji Tianqing had already pounced towards them like a shooting star. His left hand punched out with a dragon and elephant projection, while his right hand slashed out with a giant heaven-splitting sword, attacking the Battle Dragon King and Qin Yu respectively. The Battle Dragon King and Qin Yu were instantly jolted awake. They hurriedly fled towards the void crack in the sky, and used their divine artifacts and mystiques to defend themselves. The Battle Dragon King held the divine map in his left hand and the Golden Dragon divine spear in his right hand as he waved it with all his might. The giant heaven-splitting sword slashed down, but it was first blocked by the divine light in the sky, and then the Golden Dragon divine spear dissipated the force of impact. Finally, it struck the divine map. Suddenly, the ancient divine formation diagram was split in half by the giant divine sword and shattered into pieces that filled the sky. The fragments ignited with golden divine flames, and like golden fire lotuses, they bloomed in the sky and danced in the sky. A superior king-level divine map was destroyed by Ji Tianqing just like that. However, the Battle Dragon King also took this opportunity to spit out a mouthful of blood from Ji Tianqing's attack. He was sent flying back and crashed into the void crack. He paid the price of being heavily injured to block Ji Tianqing's heaven-splitting sword and successfully escaped into the outer realm. On the other side, Qin Yu's reaction was also similar. He did not hesitate to take out 3 superior king-level divine artifacts, and all of them surrounded him. He also condensed his protective divine light to the limit. The 3 divine artifacts were a divine saber, a divine armor, and a divine cauldron. The mountainous dragon elephant divine fist carried the power to destroy everything, and more than 100 divine runes of law. It blasted away the divine cauldron and shattered the divine armor. In the end, when the dragon elephant divine fist hit Qin Yu, it was blocked by the divine saber. Boom! Pfff, amidst a deafening explosion, Qin Yu was also sent flying by the punch. He rolled and crashed into the outer realm, and fell into the outer realm. However, he managed to keep his life. He was only heavily injured, and blood spurted out of his 7 orifices. As long as he could keep his life, he could accept any kind of injury. This was what he and the Battle Dragon King thought. Seeing the Battle Dragon King and Qin Yu fall into the void, Ji Tianqing did not hesitate to chase after them. He passed through the spatial crack and was about to enter the outer realm. However, at this moment, the angry, anxious, and worried voice of the Rahu Divine King suddenly sounded in his mind. Retreat! Chapter 37-37. It was a short sentence, just 2 words, but it was almost roared out. His words contained a sense of anxiety that burned like a flame, causing one's heart to tremble upon hearing them. Even with Ji Tianqing's strong will, he was stunned when he heard Luoho's Supreme Being's roar. He was a little confused. Wasn't Luoho's Supreme Being fighting the Gold Source Dragon Emperor? If he rushed over to help, he would definitely have a chance to kill the Gold Source Dragon Emperor if he teamed up with Luoho's Supreme Being. This was an excellent opportunity. Why retreat? Moreover, his tone was so anxious and resolute. Resolute? When Ji Tianqing realized this, an idea flashed through his mind as he suddenly understood something. Luoho's Supreme Being and the Gold Source Dragon Emperor had been fighting for a long time. They had exchanged at least tens of thousands of blows. Now, both of them must have suffered serious injuries and victory was about to be decided. At this moment, Luoho's Supreme Being's sudden roar meant that something big had happened. Ji Tianqing immediately guessed that either Luoho's Supreme Being or the Gold Source Dragon Emperor had self-detonated in a desperate counterattack. That's right, self-detonation. This was a simple, violent, yet effective counterattack. Even if they sacrificed themselves, they could destroy the other party and perish together. At the same time, this was the only possibility that would make Luoho's Supreme Being so anxious. He sent Ji Tianqing a voice transmission to retreat. Otherwise, Ji Tianqing would not have to retreat at all. This was because Luoho's Supreme Being knew his strength. Ordinary mystiques could not threaten him at all. He was 60 to 70,000 miles away from the 2 pinnacle Supreme Being in the void. Only self-detonation could seriously injure or even kill him. When this thought popped into his mind, Ji Tianqing was 80% sure of the answer. Therefore, he did not have time to think. He retreated from the spatial crack without hesitation and returned to the Sky River Mystery Realm. At this moment, the Battle Dragon King and Qinyu, who had already charged into the void, suddenly stopped. Their bodies stiffened. The 2 of them seemed to have received the Gold Source Dragon Emperor's voice transmission. Their expressions turned ugly. They were shocked and fearful. Just from their expressions, it could be inferred that they had also learned some shocking and unbelievable news. However, the 2 of them reacted quickly. They only paused for a moment before regaining their senses. They looked at each other and took out their divine weapons without hesitation to protect themselves. Moreover, the 2 of them activated their divine power at all costs and sped towards the void to the side at their fastest speed. Tens of thousands of miles ahead of them was the battlefield between Luoho's Supreme Being and the Gold Source Dragon Emperor. 20,000 miles behind him was a fragmented void crack. Further in was the Sky River Secret Realm. The 2 of them could not move forward, nor could they retreat. They could only flee to the side. Unquestionably, this was the right choice at this moment of a time. Almost in the next instant, a dazzling divine light suddenly lit up in the void, and an enormous explosion that shook the heavens and the earth erupted. The dazzling golden light exploded in the void like a scorching sun, and also like a huge mushroom cloud rising into the sky. In an instant, the void within 100,000 miles was lit up. The entire region turned into a golden world. Boundless divine light and divine power swept out in all directions with the explosion of the golden mushroom cloud. Without a doubt, this was the self-destruction of a peak Supreme Being. The golden light that could destroy everything not only destroyed the void but also swallowed his opponent. In less than half an instant, the terrifying shockwave of golden light slammed into the space barrier of the Sky River Secret Realm. The spatial barrier near Ji Tianqing had already been destroyed by Luoho's Supreme Being and the Gold Source Dragon Emperor. It was full of cracks and holes. At this moment, the spatial barrier, which was full of holes, was bombarded by the resplendent golden light and immediately collapsed. Tens of thousands of cracks appeared on the spatial barrier before it collapsed and shattered into pieces. Boundless spatial fragments splashed out and fell into the void. The Sky River Mystery Realm was completely destroyed. There was no way to patch up the huge hole in the spatial barrier. Terrifying void windstorms surged in from the hole and wreaked havoc in the Sky River Mystery Realm. The sky, earth, and ruins were all swallowed by the dark void windstorms and turned into a void. Ji Tianqing reacted quickly and retreated into the Sky River Mystery Realm in time to avoid the explosion of the Supreme Being's self-destruction. However, he was not fast enough to escape. He was immediately engulfed by the golden light and was about to be swallowed by the rapidly spreading void windstorms. At this critical moment, he could only endure the pain and weakness and forcibly use the infinite sky of chaos. Even though his forceful use of the everlasting sky of chaos had already exceeded the limits of his endurance, causing his internal organs, meridians, and mind to be injured and torn apart, he was still able to endure the pain. However, in order to escape, he could not care less. Swoosh! With a flash of white light, Ji Tianqing disappeared into thin air right before the golden shockwave engulfed him. In the next instant, he used the infinite sky of chaos to travel more than 200,000 miles and escape into the depths of the Sky River Mystery Realm. The golden light from the explosion was still spreading and rushing into the Sky River Mystery Realm. It crushed the sky, earth, and spatial barriers along the way, leaving behind only a boundless dark void. However, Ji Tianqing had already put some distance between himself and the explosion. His life was no longer in danger. Cough, cough, he stood in the sky, his body bent. He coughed violently and blood spurted out from his nose and mouth. His face was as white as a sheet. He was sweating profusely. His breathing was very weak and chaotic. However, he did not dare to waste time healing himself. He only took one look at the golden light that was rushing towards him and then sped up his retreat. After all, he was not sure how far the explosion of a supreme being's self-destruction could cover. It could be 500,000 miles or 800,000 miles. However, no matter what, it could not be less than 300,000 miles. Swish! At this moment, Ji Tianqing was extremely worried and anxious. He really wanted to know who was the one who had initiated the self-destruction. Was it the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor or the Luoho Supreme Being? Why had things developed to this stage? Why did it have to end with self-destruction? These thoughts flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind. However, he did not have time to think carefully. He could only try his best to escape. When he escaped another 80,000 miles, the golden light finally caught up to him. No matter how fast he was far inferior to the divine light of a supreme being's self-destruction. Bang! With a muffled sound, Ji Tianqing was like a sandbag that had been punched. He rolled and fell toward the mountains in the distance. He only felt a sharp pain in his back and heard a few cracking sounds of bones breaking. Then, he flew across 1,000 miles of sky in a daze, then fell back into the mountains. Before he fainted, the last scene he saw was the endless ruins and the rapidly spreading void. The golden divine light that had spread more than 400,000 miles gradually became thinner and weaker. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 37-38. When the peak divine king self-destructed, the dazzling golden light exploded like the sun. The battle dragon king and Qinyu were already running away with all their might. Although their speed was not as terrifying as Ji Tianqing's, they had already escaped. They used their teleportation divine abilities to escape 120,000 miles away before they were engulfed by the spreading golden light. Bam! Bam! Without a doubt, the two of them were also hit by the dazzling golden light. They flew out like arrows and smashed into the depths of the void. They were already prepared. They used their divine power to condense their protective divine light to the limit and took out a few divine artifacts to protect themselves. However, when those divine artifacts were hit by the dazzling golden light, they quickly melted like snow under the scorching sun. Their protective divine light was also weak and could not withstand a single blow. It was instantly destroyed. Fortunately, when the dazzling golden light hit them, it was blocked by the divine artifacts and protective divine light. Its power was already weakened by a few %. The two of them did not die on the spot. They were only severely injured by the dazzling golden light and fell unconscious. After losing consciousness, the two of them were like rootless duckweed. They fell into the void thousands of miles away and floated deeper into the void along with the violent torrent of golden light. After suffering such severe injuries, it was unknown when the two of them would wake up. After an unknown period of time. Perhaps it was 2 hours. Perhaps it was a day. Ji Tianqing, who was unconscious, could vaguely feel a few majestic divine powers continuously entering his body to help heal his injuries. His consciousness gradually left the darkness and he slowly woke up. When he opened his eyes, he found himself lying in a wide and bright hall. There were several people surrounding him. Everyone was looking at him with concern and worry. The two faces closest to him were still beautiful even though they were tear-stained. They were Yun Yao and Ji Ku. Besides them, Yang, Chao Qingyu, Bai Feng, and Ao Jining were all present. Everyone's clothes were ragged, their hair was messy, and they were covered in blood. A few of them were severely injured. However, they completely ignored their injuries and stared at him without blinking. Their feelings of concern were clearly expressed in their words. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing roughly understood that he had been saved. At this time, the great battle in the Sky River secret realm must have ended. The hall he was in was actually the interior of a divine ship. At this moment, when everyone saw Ji Tianqing open his eyes and wake up, they all revealed joyful smiles and cheered in delight. Young Master is awake. Everyone, look. Great. Young Master is finally awake. The Lord has finally woken up. The originally quiet hall immediately became lively. Everyone surrounded Ji Tianqing and asked about his well-being, paying attention to his injuries. Yun Yao and Ji Ku, in particular, heaved a sigh of relief. The heavy burden in their hearts was finally lifted, and they quickly wiped away the tears on their cheeks. Ji Tianqing's face was still pale, and his spirit and divine power were still very weak. However, he was already fully awake. He supported his injuries and sat up. He waved to everyone and said, "Everyone, don't worry. I'm fine." After that, he secretly released his divine sense to check his injuries. The situation was not optimistic. Just as he had expected, he was now seriously injured. His internal organs had been shattered and displaced. Fortunately, everyone had treated him and stopped the bleeding. His godhead had been hit by the explosion of the golden light, and there were some faint cracks. This caused his divine power and spirit to be weak. He would need to recuperate for many years to recover. As for the 9 wounds all over his body and the dozen or so broken bones on his back, his injuries looked frightening, but he did not take them to heart. These were all physical injuries. With his strong self-healing ability, he would definitely be able to recover after 2 years of careful recuperation. In general, these injuries were serious, but they were still within the acceptable range. In particular, he had endured the impact of the explosion of the golden light, but he only suffered these injuries. It was really unbelievable. Yao Yao, Cuckoo, how long have I been unconscious? Ji Tianqing was silent for a moment before he asked Yun Yao and Ji Ku. Yun Yao replied in a gentle voice, "Tianqing, you have been unconscious for 6 hours. Phew. That's good." Ji Tianqing was relieved again. He quickly said, "Whose divine ship are we in? Are we returning to the demon city?" Ji Ku quickly explained, "Brother Tianqing, the great elder is piloting the divine ship now. We are rushing back to the demon city. Everyone needs to recuperate." Ji Tianqing frowned and asked, "Is the matter of the Sky River mystery realm over? Have the remnants of the Xuanji grotto been eliminated?" No, let Hu Xinyue return to the Sky River Mystery Realm. I have to go and see if there are any fish that escaped the net. As he spoke, he got up and was about to go to the control room to find Hu Xinyue. Yunyao quickly pulled his arm and shook her head at him. She explained, Tianxing, don't worry. The matter of the Sky River Mystery Realm is over. Previously, the few of us intercepted the 3 divine kings. After killing them one by one, we went to the depths of the Mystery Realm to meet up with you. Unexpectedly, before we could find you, we saw an endless amount of golden light coming. It shattered the Sky River Mystery Realm and brought about a dark void. That golden light was very scary. It spread for more than 400,000 miles before it gradually dissipated. When she said this, Ji Ku, Chao Qingyu, and the others all looked scared. Yunyao continued, fortunately, we were far away and retreated in time. That was why we were not hit by the terrifying golden light. After the golden light dissipated, we found you in a broken piece of the mystery realm. At that time, you were unconscious and lying in a ruin. That ruin was surrounded by broken space and pitch-black void. After we found you, we worked together to help you heal. After that, we searched the Sky River Mystery Realm again. However, we did not find anyone from the Xuanji Grotto. At this time, Ji Ku continued, those divine kings from the Xuanji Grotto had all been killed by us. There should only be a few leaders left. However, we searched the entire Sky River Mystery Realm and did not see anyone. At that time, we guessed that those few leaders had most likely been killed by you. Even if they were not killed by you, they must have died under the terrifying golden light. Therefore, we brought you out of the Sky River Mystery Realm. The entrance of the Mystery Realm was sealed by a god array. It was only when everyone worked together to break the array that we could leave the Sky River Mystery Realm successfully. However, there was a group of experts guarding the entrance of the Mystery Realm. The leader was a 9th-stage divine king. According to them, he was the clan leader of the Cheongqi clan. Although they had the advantage in numbers, not knowing why, the clan leader of the Cheongqi clan seemed to be afraid of us. He ran away without saying a word. We did not dare to waste time to prevent you from healing, so we did not chase after the clan leader of the Cheongqi clan. You know what happened next. We just left for an hour and you woke up. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing finally understood the whole story and was really relieved. He was thinking that the Battle Dragon King and Qin Yu's abilities were weaker. They were not like him who could execute the endless sky of turbidity and escape 300,000 miles in an instant. He reckoned that those 2 fellows had died under the golden light and turned into ashes. Chapter 37-39. Ji Tianqing understood a few things after witnessing the self-destruction of a peak godly king. Firstly, the self-destruction of a peak godly king's avatar could affect a radius of 500,000 miles. If it was the self-destruction of a peak godly king's true body, the range would be even wider, possibly reaching 800,000 miles. The power of the self-destruction golden light was too terrifying. Even a peak godly king would not be spared if he got too close. Hence, he had to be on his guard in the future. Secondly, Xuanji Grotto Heaven and the 10,000 Demon Alliance were at loggerheads. They also had a lot of information, and Xue Shang had played a huge role in this. It was obvious that Xue Shang did not dare to attack him because of his oath to the heavenly Tao. However, Xue Shang was not willing to submit to humiliation. Even if he had to grovel and curry favor with the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor, he had to take revenge. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing made up his mind. After he recovered from his injuries, he had to go to the Nebula Grotto Heaven to kill Xue Shang. The Taotai clan and the Cheongqi clan were the root of all the troubles and wars in the Starsource continent. At this moment, Chao Qingyu and Ao Jinying asked in unison, Young Master, what was that golden light? When the 2 of them asked, everyone quieted down. Although the others did not ask, they stared at Ji Tianqing with complicated expressions, waiting for him to answer. Although they had already discussed it before, they could guess the answer in their hearts. However, they did not dare to be sure. They still wanted to ask Ji Tianqing, the person involved. Ji Tianqing recalled the boundless golden light that engulfed everything. He said in a low voice, "I believe you have already guessed it. That's right, it was the self-destruction of a peak godly king." His words confirmed everyone's guess. Instantly, everyone's expressions changed drastically, and they were filled with shock and worry. Especially Ao Jinying, the fourth elder, and the fifth elder. They could not wait to ask, "Young master, was the self-destruction of the alliance leader, or the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor?" When they asked this question, the three of them still had a glimmer of hope in their hearts. They prayed silently that the self-destruction was not the alliance leader. If the alliance leader had self-destructed, he would definitely die. If it was the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor who had self-destructed, then the alliance leader might still have a chance to live. However, Ji Tianqing shook his head and said in a heavy tone, "It doesn't matter who initiated the self-detonation. At that time, they were fighting in the void and were very close to each other. Under such circumstances, no matter who initiated the self-detonation, the outcome would be mutual destruction." After hearing the answer, Ao Jinying and the two elders were filled with grief. Their eyes reddened. Although Yank, Chao Qingyu, Bai Feng, and the others did not recognize God King Luoho, their hearts were heavy and their faces were gloomy. The hall fell into silence, and the atmosphere was rather stifling. Ji Tianqing's gaze swept across the crowd. He frowned and said, "You don't have to be so sad. Those are only their external incarnations, not their true bodies. At most, after spending 100 years of effort, they will be able to refine another avatar." After his explanation, everyone came to a sudden realization and felt much more relaxed. Yank, Chao Qingyu, Bai Feng, and the others were completely unaware. As for Ao Jinying, the fourth elder, and the fifth elder, they did not know much either. In the entire Myriad Demon Alliance, only the left and right protectors and Grand Elder Hu Xinyue knew that God King Luoho was an avatar. It was precisely because of this that Ao Jinying and the two elders were filled with grief, despair, and indignation. Now that they knew the truth and that their alliance leader's life was not in danger, they heaved a sigh of relief. Ji Tianqing continued, "My injuries are not serious. You don't have to worry. I will be fine after a few years of seclusion. However, all of you have suffered serious injuries from the battle. Don't crowd around me. Go back to the secret chamber to recuperate. When we return to the Myriad Demon City, I will discuss matters with all of you." Ao Jinying and the two elders hurriedly bowed and said, "Yes, sir." Since alliance leader Luoho was not around, they respected Ji Tianqing. They did not dare to disobey him. After they bowed and left, Ji Tianqing opened the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes Pagoda and sent Yank, Chao Qingyu, and Bai Feng into the pagoda. He instructed them to go into seclusion to recuperate. Only Ji Tianqing, Yin Yao, and Ji Ku were left in the hall. The two women were worried about Ji Tianqing's injuries. They insisted on accompanying him and circulating their energy to help him recuperate. However, Ji Tianqing shook his head and refused. "I know my own situation. These injuries only look scary, but they are not dangerous. As for the two of you, you have suffered serious injuries from the battle earlier. Your strength is also very weak. Quickly return to the distorted spacetime to recuperate. Don't leave behind a disaster that will affect the foundation of your divine Tao." Yin Yao and Ji Ku could not withstand his repeated persuasion. Seeing that his injuries were not serious, they entered the distorted spacetime to enter seclusion. After sending everyone away, Ji Tianqing sat on the spot and pondered for a moment. Then, he took out a special purple communication jade slip, entered a message, and sent it out. Swish! The jade slip streaked across the sky and disappeared into the depths of the sky. Ji Tianqing looked at the blue sky outside the window and waited silently. That purple communication jade slip was the emergency contact method that Divine King Luoho had given him. All this while, Ji Tianqing had never encountered such a dangerous situation. Therefore, this was the first time he used it. Although he had just told everyone that Divine King Luoho and the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor's clones should have perished together. However, he did not see the outcome with his own eyes. He still had a glimmer of hope and luck in his heart. If it was the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor who had self-destructed, Divine King Luoho might have been able to survive with his strength and methods. Time passed quietly. Soon, an hour had passed. Ji Tianqing sat for a long time but did not receive a reply. 2 hours later, there was still no reply. His eyes gradually dimmed. He already had an answer in his heart. Therefore, he got up and left the hall. He entered a secret room, took out the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes pagoda, and went into seclusion to heal his injuries. Swoosh! In a flash of white light, Ji Tianqing returned to the distorted spacetime. He dragged his heavily injured body back to the bloody flame sacred tree. At this moment, Yunyao, Ji Ku, Yank, Chao Qingyu, and the others had already sat down under the sacred tree and were in seclusion to heal their injuries. Ji Tianqing did not waste any time. He took out a few healing elixirs from his interspatial ring, as well as a large pile of origin stones and divine crystals, and began to heal his injuries. Although his divine body was already extremely strong and would not be easily injured. Even if he was injured, his self-healing ability was very strong and his recovery speed was much faster than ordinary people. However, his injuries were different this time. Half of it was because he had forcefully used the everlasting sky of turbidity several times in a short period of time, which resulted in a huge backlash. The other half of his injuries were because of the impact of the golden light from the self-destruction, which had damaged his divine body, divine core, and spirit. The golden light from the self-destruction of a peak divine king had released his lifetime's divine power and nomological laws. The injuries caused by the golden light were not ordinary injuries. They were Tao injuries. In other words, they were injuries that contained the will of the great Tao and the Tao of nomological laws. Such injuries were the most difficult to heal and recover from. If they were not treated properly and could not be healed completely, it would have a huge impact on one's divine Tao foundation. However, Ji Tianqing did not want to affect everyone's emotions. Therefore, he buried it in his heart and did not say anything. Chapter 3740. Hu Xinyue steered the divine warship and took 38 hours to return to Demon City. Previously, Luoho Divine King only needed a day to travel, but she needed a day and a half. This was normal. The 2 protectors and the second elder in charge of Demon City had already received Hu Xinyue's message and knew what happened in the Sky River Mystic Realm. They were full of worries, but they could not help. They could only strengthen Demon City's defenses to prevent Xuanji Grotto Heaven from attacking. Although the possibility of that was not high. However, Alliance leader Luoho's clone had died in the void. Now that the Demon Alliance was leaderless, they could only guard Demon City. They did not want to make any contributions, but they did not want to make any mistakes. At least, when Alliance leader Luoho's original body rushed back, Demon City would still be intact. This was the greatest contribution. After many checks, the divine warship returned to Demon City and landed outside the dazzling divine palace. Everyone was woken up by Hu Xinyue. They finished recuperating and left the divine warship. Ao Jinying, the 4th elder, and the 5th elder had only recuperated for a day. They did not seem to have changed much. However, Ji Tianqing's injuries were more than half healed. A day and a half had passed in the outside world. He had already been recuperating in the distorted spacetime for 2.5 months. He had consumed more than 3 billion worth of resources and elixirs. His physical injuries were basically healed. Even though his godhead and mind injuries had not recovered, his strength was still weak. However, on the surface, he did not seem to have any injuries. Originally, Hu Xinyue, Ao Jinying, the fourth elder, and the fifth elder should have returned to their respective residences to recuperate. However, Ji Tianqing had said that he wanted to gather everyone for a meeting, so Hu Xinyue hurriedly sent a message to inform everyone. Ji Tianqing led Ao Jinying and the two elders to the Divine Palace's conference hall. 30 minutes later, the high-level experts of Demon Alliance gathered in the conference hall. Luoho Divine King was not present. Ji Tianqing sat on the main throne. Hu Xinyue was the person he trusted the most besides Luoho Divine King. She was arranged to stand beside the throne. In the spacious and bright hall, more than a dozen Divine King experts stood in 2 rows. Their eyes were focused on Ji Tianqing. Among the dozen or so God King experts, the 2 leaders were the left and right protectors. The rest were the 7 elders, the 2 leaders of the 12 heavenly kings, the chief of internal affairs, the patrol commander, and so on. Everyone had heard that Long Tian was hiding in the demon city and had a close relationship with the alliance leader. However, the crowd was only talking about it in private. Many of them had never seen Ji Tianqing before. As for Ji Tianqing, he had been in the myriad demon city for almost 2 months, but he had been living in seclusion. Other than Hu Xinyue and Ao Jinying, he had not seen anyone else. It was his first time meeting the mysterious left and right protectors and the Minister of Internal Affairs, who was dressed like a rich man in the secular world. Upon seeing these 3 trusted aides of God King Rahu, he couldn't help but be stunned. He stared at the left and right protectors and the Chief of Internal Affairs with a complicated expression. Tang Wu, Lan Qi, Fu Ergu. It's you guys. Without a doubt, as God King Rahu's right-hand men and his most trusted aides, the 3 of them were old members of the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace. Ji Tianqing knew all of them. The left protector, Tang Wu, was the captain of the Heavenly Dragon Emperor's personal guards. The right protector, Lan Qi, was the commander of the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace's guards. As for the Chief of Internal Affairs, Fu Ergu, he was also the old housekeeper in charge of the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace's internal affairs. The 3 of them were the trusted aides of the Heavenly Dragon Emperor. Ji Tianqing had been with them for more than 100 years and was very familiar with them. It was obvious that after Dark North took over the Dragon Emperor's position, many of the old members of the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace stayed behind. However, Ophiuchus brought the 3 old officials and Ao Jinying out of the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace and came to the Starsource continent to establish the Myriad Demon Alliance. This was not strange. In fact, it was within reason. Ji Tianqing was not surprised. He finally understood why the Myriad Demon Alliance could develop to such a scale in just a few hundred years. It could even threaten the ruling position of the mysterious grotto. With the peak god King Ophiuchus and the 3 old officials, it would be hard for them not to achieve great things. When Ji Tianqing recognized the left and right protectors and the Chief of Internal Affairs, the 3 of them looked at Ji Tianqing carefully. Their expressions were complicated and their eyes were wet. When they heard Ji Tianqing calling out their names, the 3 of them trembled. Their hearts were filled with joy and excitement. They quickly stepped forward and stood side by side before Ji Tianqing and bowed. This subordinate greets the young lord. Young lord, I didn't expect to see you again after more than 1,300 years. We haven't seen each other for more than 1,000 years and the young lord still remembers our faces and names. What have we done to deserve this? We have heard the Alliance Master mention it before. We didn't dare to disturb the young lord and we didn't dare to confirm it. I didn't expect the rumor to be true. The young lord is really back. The 3 old officials looked at Ji Tianqing and recalled the past. Suddenly, all sorts of emotions welled up in their hearts and tears flowed down their cheeks. Ji Tianqing quickly got up and raised his hand, allowing the 3 old officials to rise. He walked towards the three of them with a smile on his face and greeted the three old officials with concern. The various elders, heavenly kings, and patrol envoys in the hall looked at this scene with complicated expressions and started to discuss secretly. Is this the Long Tian who caused an uproar and shook the world? Why does he look so young? I wonder how strong he is. I heard that he killed many domain lords and high-level god kings along the way. His strength is definitely not ordinary. I heard that he was the last disciple of the heaven-sealing dragon emperor. The Alliance Master, the two protectors and the Chief of Internal Affairs all call him Young Lord. Doesn't that mean, the Alliance Master and the protectors are old officials of the heaven-sealing dragon emperor? Now that the Alliance Master is in trouble, this young Lord Long Tian wants to take charge of the situation. I wonder if he can do it. If he doesn't have the strength of a ninth heaven realm or a peak-level god king, I'm afraid he won't be able to take on such a big responsibility. After all, the Alliance has close to 30,000 members. Any order can determine the life and death of countless people. This is not a game. Everyone, don't worry. The young lord is an unparalleled talent. Previously in the Sky River Secret Realm, he fought Heartless God King, Battle Dragon King and Qin Yu alone and defeated them. Other than Ao Jinying, these elders and leaders did not know the true identity of Luo Ho Divine King and Long Tian's background. Now that they knew the identities of the Alliance Master, the Protectors, and the Chief of Internal Affairs, they were all shocked and found it hard to believe. At the same time, they were also suspicious of the young Lord Long Tian and did not dare to accept him to take charge of the situation. As for Ao Jinying, the fourth elder and the fifth elder, they had fought side by side with Ji Tianqing and knew that Ji Tianqing's strength was terrifying. Naturally, they were full of admiration and quickly vouched for him. Soon, Ji Tianqing, the left and right protectors and the Chief of Internal Affairs finished exchanging greetings. The three old officials returned to their ranks and stood respectfully. Ji Tianqing also returned to his seat and sat down before speaking. All of you are the mainstays of our alliance, as well as the Alliance Master's trusted aides. I believe everyone has heard about what happened in the Sky River Secret Realm. Therefore, this king has gathered everyone to discuss the next countermeasures and plans. Chapter 3741. Ji Tianqing's expression was calm, and his tone was authoritative. Moreover, he had secretly used his divine spirit power, and his voice contained an intimidating authority. This was just a small method to show his strength and establish his authority, but it was very effective. Everyone in the hall was instantly intimidated by his divine spirit power, and a trace of respect grew in their hearts. Thus, the whispers and discussions disappeared. Everyone's expression was solemn, and their postures were respectful. They no longer dared to discuss secretly through voice transmission. Ji Tianqing's gaze swept across everyone, and he was very satisfied with this result. He continued, the incident in the Sky River Secret Realm happened because of me. I believe everyone has heard that Alliance Master Luo Ho is helping me investigate and find a young man. It is also because of this that the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor took the opportunity to set up an ambush in the Sky River Secret Realm. Although the Alliance Master and I were ambushed in the Sky River Secret Realm, the results were still very good. But overall, the results of the battle were quite remarkable. The Xuanji Grotto had suffered even greater losses. Not only were the 30-odd divine kings gathered by the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor killed, but I also killed the Heartless Divine King and Tan Yu. The Battle Dragon King and Qin Yu are stranded in the void, and their current status is unknown. Even if they are lucky enough to survive, they will definitely be severely injured and will not be able to show themselves in the next few years. As for Alliance Master Luo Ho and the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor, they are fighting in the void. If one of them self-destructs, the other will definitely die. Hearing this, everyone's expression changed drastically, and they could no longer suppress the shock and panic in their hearts. Previously, they had only heard of this, but they had not confirmed this news. Now that they had received confirmation from Ji Tianqing, everyone panicked, and their hearts were burning with worry. Ji Tianqing waved his hand, indicating for everyone to quieten down. He continued, "Everyone, please calm down. Alliance Master Luo Ho and the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor are both peak divine kings. How could they die so easily? In fact, those are just their external incarnations. Their true bodies are not currently in the dragon realm, and they will not be affected. I have already contacted Divine King Luo Ho, and his true body will be back soon to take charge of the situation. Therefore, there is no need for everyone to worry." Hearing this, the elders and leaders finally heaved a sigh of relief, dispelling the doubts and worries in their hearts. Ji Tianqing glanced at everyone's expressions and reactions, then continued with an expressionless face, "Currently, Xuanji Wonderland and our alliance are like fire and water. We have to settle this once and for all." In the Battle of the Sky River Secret Realm, the alliance was able to preserve its strength, but the Xuanji Grotto suffered heavy losses. Therefore, now is the perfect time for our alliance to destroy the Enigma Grotto. In the next few months, please gather your forces, accumulate strength, and await orders and dispatches at any time. Once Alliance Master Luo Ho's true body returns, our alliance's army will attack the mysterious paradise. At that time, our alliance will destroy the Xuanji Grotto heaven and take over the Starsource continent. Ji Tianqing's tone was sonorous, impassioned, and rather inspiring. Quite a few elders and leaders felt their blood boiling, their faces filled with excitement and anticipation. However, there were also a few people who were expressionless. No one knew what they were thinking. After pausing for a moment, Ji Tianqing said in a dignified tone, "Today's meeting is over. I hope everyone will obey the order and prepare for war. Of course, I have to remind everyone. Since Alliance Master Luo Ho's true body is not here, I am the leader. Everyone better obey the order and not be passive and lazy. Otherwise, I will not be as lenient as Alliance Master Luo Ho." The last two sentences were a blatant threat. To many of the higher-ups, this kind of method was rather low-class, and even disgusting. As expected, the expressions of several elders and leaders were a little strange. Their eyes flashed with mockery. However, Ji Tianqing ignored them. He waved his sleeve and ordered, "The left and right protectors, the chief of internal affairs, Wu Xinyue, and Ao Jining, stay. The rest of you, please leave." Everyone said in unison, then bowed and bade farewell. After a while, many elders and leaders left the main hall in groups of 3 to 5. Ji Tianqing did not need to use his divine sense to know that those people must be talking behind his back, and there might even be rumors. Only Ji Tianqing and the left and right protectors were left in the main hall. Immediately, the hall fell into silence. At this time, Ji Tianqing's cold expression and eyes quickly dissipated. He looked at everyone and said calmly, "Since the Alliance Master is not here, the only people I can trust are the 5 of you. The left and right protectors, the chief of internal affairs, and Ao Jining were all old officials of the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace." Of course, they understood Ji Tianqing's meaning. The 4 of them bowed without hesitation and said, "Please give us your orders, young master." Wu Xinyue had joined the Myriad Demon Alliance later and was also trusted by Ji Tianqing. She was flattered. "Thank you for your trust, young master. Wu Xinyue is willing to serve you, even if it means going through fire and water." Ji Tianqing waved his hand, indicating that everyone was at ease, and said, "I will not talk nonsense with you. Actually, I have sent a message to the Alliance Master. Unfortunately, there is still no news. There is no need to take any chances. The Alliance Master's incarnation has been destroyed. You must have other methods and means to contact the Alliance Master's original body. Go and do it later." The left and right protectors quickly said yes. At this time, the chief of internal affairs, Fu Ergu, stroked his beard and said with a gloomy face, "Young master, the mysterious cave actually knew about our secret mission and took the opportunity to set up an ambush. Obviously, there is a spy in our alliance. This old servant thinks that we should eliminate the spy first, and then consider the plan to attack the mysterious cave." The left and right protectors also realized this point and quickly agreed. Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "You really did not disappoint me. You thought of this point so quickly. You are not stupid." "That's right. Before the alliance master and I left, we already guessed that there was a spy in our alliance. We planned to come back and eliminate the spy after the Sky River Secret Realm incident, but we did not expect the alliance master's incarnation to be destroyed. This matter will be handled by me now. The spy hiding in our alliance will not have a high status, but it will not be too low either. Those elders and leaders are all suspicious, but I have not been in the Demon City for long. I do not even know all of them, let alone the inside story. Therefore, I purposely ordered them to prepare for war. I said that we will attack the mysterious cave and unify the Starsource continent. I purposely threatened them to provoke them and make them reveal themselves. Next, the 5 of you will have to keep an eye on those people and see if they do anything strange." After listening to Ji Tianqing's explanation, everyone came to a sudden realization, and they all revealed knowing smiles. "I see. No wonder the young master did not discuss with us and recklessly suggested attacking the mysterious cave. The young master is indeed wise. He has the wisdom of the old master. The spy hiding in our alliance knows that the mysterious cave has suffered heavy losses, and we are preparing to attack the mysterious cave. That spy must be worried and will try to warn the mysterious cave to be on guard. This way, we only need to keep an eye on them and we will be able to find a flaw. Young master, you have my respect." Chapter 37-42. Everyone understood Ji Tianqing's idea, and they all agreed and admired his methods. Now that alliance leader Luo Ho was not here, and he had just arrived at the Myriad Demon Alliance, he had no foundation or prestige to speak of. If he investigated the elders and leaders openly, it would definitely force the spies to hide and be more cautious. In that case, it would be very difficult to find out who the spies were. However, he took advantage of the fact that everyone did not understand him and was suspicious of him to act rashly and fatuously. Rashly proposing to prepare for war and attack the Xuanji Grotto was reckless. Threatening his subordinates in public before he had gained the loyalty of his subordinates was a foolish act. However, doing so could lower the spies' wariness and force them to contact the Xuanji Grotto, which would definitely reveal their flaws. Therefore, Ji Tianqing's method could be said to be violent and effective. Most importantly, this method could save time and would not cause internal strife in the Myriad Demon Alliance. Even if Alliance leader Luo Ho was present, he could not use this method. Only Ji Tianqing was suitable. The left and right protectors, Hu Xinyue, and the other 4 were not mediocre. In the blink of an eye, everyone understood the key and the reason, which was why they admired Ji Tianqing so much. Ji Tianqing continued, "Hu Xinyue, Ao Jinying, the 2 of you have been seriously injured in the previous battle. Originally, you should focus on recuperating in seclusion. However, in order to eliminate the spies as soon as possible, I need more patience. After this matter is settled, you can focus on recuperating." Hu Xinyue and Ao Jinying naturally had no objections. They quickly saluted and said, "Please rest assured, young master. This is our duty. We will not shirk our duty." Left Protector Tang Wu frowned and thought for a while, then asked, "Young master, you just ordered everyone to accumulate strength and prepare for war. Are we really going to attack the Xuanji Grotto after we eliminate the spies?" The other 4 were also very concerned about this question. They all looked at Ji Tianqing with shining eyes, waiting for his answer. Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "Actually, Alliance leader Luo Ho is not very interested in dominating the Starsource continent. However, the Xuanji Grotto took the initiative to attack and wanted to destroy the Myriad Demon Alliance, so he could only fight back. If we can't destroy the Enigma Grotto, they will definitely try to destroy us in the future. Therefore, the order I gave just now is both true and false. You don't have to stop them, just let the people below prepare for the battle in peace. The most important thing right now was to contact Alliance Master Luo Ho's main body and see if he had any suggestions. In another 2 or 3 months, my injuries will be completely healed. If the time is right, we can even attack the Xuanji Wonderland. Hearing the confidence in his tone, everyone felt more confident. Their spirits were lifted, and their blood was boiling. Next, they discussed some more details before taking their leave. After everyone left to carry out their respective tasks, Ji Tianqing left the conference hall and returned to the secret chamber. Thanks to Tang Wu, Lan Qi, and Fu Ergu, I was able to control the Myriad Demon Alliance easily. Otherwise, if Hu Xinyue and Ao Jinying are not powerful enough, it will not be easy to perform today's show. Back in the secret chamber, Ji Tianqing sat cross-legged and shook his head with a chuckle. No wonder Ophiuchus said that returning to the Myriad Demon Alliance is equivalent to returning home. That old man, why didn't he tell me the identity of the left and right protectors earlier? He even made me prepare several emergency plans. That's right. On the way back to the Myriad Demon City, Ji Tianqing had been thinking and planning how to eliminate the spies. At that time, he did not know that the left and right protectors and the chief of internal affairs were on his side. He thought that since Ophiuchus was not in the Myriad Demon Alliance, he could only trust Hu Xinyue and Ao Jinying. Therefore, he came up with several plans at that time, all of which were more complicated and time-consuming. Until just now, when he saw that the left and right protectors and the chief of internal affairs were old officials of the Heavenly Dragon Divine Palace, he suddenly felt confident. He immediately changed his mind and no longer cast a long line to catch a big fish. He directly carried out a simple, crude, and efficient plan. The plan had already begun, and it was carried out by the left and right protectors and Hu Xinyue. He did not need to worry about it anymore. He just needed to wait patiently for the results. Taking advantage of this opportunity, what he needed to do was to enter the distorted spacetime and heal his injuries as soon as possible. Swoosh! With a flash of divine light, Ji Tianqing entered the distorted spacetime. There was only a divine pagoda left in the secret chamber. He returned to the blood flame sacred tree and meditated, silently thinking about how to heal his injuries. The injuries of the divine body have already healed. Now, only the Tao injuries of the Godhead and Spirit are left. Ordinary divine pills and cultivation resources can't heal my Tao injuries at all. I only have 40% of my peak strength now, which is equivalent to an ordinary 9th heaven divine king. To heal my Tao injuries, the most effective way is to consume divine pills that contain the will of the Great Path. However, those are all top-grade king-level divine pills, and they are of a specific type. Not to mention that I can't refine them now, the Myriad Demon Alliance's treasury probably doesn't have them. Ji Tianqing frowned as he thought about how to solve the problem. His brows were filled with worry. In his previous life, as a peak divine king, he had once killed a peak divine king and suffered a Tao injury. Therefore, he spent more than 10 years and painstaking efforts to refine a top-grade king-level divine pill to heal his Tao injuries. Now, with his current strength, he did not have the corresponding materials to refine the pills. If he wanted to heal his Tao injuries, he would have to think of another way. After sitting for a long time, he suddenly looked up at the blood flame sacred tree and thought to himself, is it possible for the power of the sacred tree to heal my Tao injuries? After he entered the dragon realm, he had already killed over 100 divine king powerhouses. Among them, 30% were high-ranking divine kings. Naturally, the blood flame sacred tree could absorb a huge amount of blood chi and spiritual energy after every kill. Now, the blood flame sacred tree had already reached the mid-grade king level and was not far from the high-grade king level. The sacred tree had also grown by 80%, and its height was close to 30,000 feet. Unfortunately, this mid-grade king level blood flame sacred tree was still unable to heal his Dao injuries. Ji Tianqing dismissed this thought and thought about the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Tower and the Primordial Chaos Bell. These two top-grade king-level divine artifacts had extraordinary origins. Of course, they contained the will of the Great Path. The divine pagoda originated from the ancient phoenix divine bird. It was most likely a treasure like a clan's divine artifact. In particular, the Phoenix clan had been punished by the heavens and had disappeared without a trace. They were almost extinct. Ji Tianqing was 80% sure that the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Tower could heal his Dao injuries. Unfortunately, this divine pagoda had become Ji Ke's natal divine artifact. He could not use it to heal his Dao injuries. The Primordial Chaos Bell was also an ancient divine artifact. It was also the Taotai clan's treasure. However, Ji Tianqing had just obtained it not long ago. He had been refining it and could not make it his natal divine artifact. He could not use the will of the Great Path in the Primordial Chaos Bell to heal his Dao injuries. After thinking about it, these two top-grade king-level divine artifacts could not be used. The only top-grade divine artifact he had was the Heaven-Mending Pearl. The Heaven-Mending Pearl was also a divine artifact from the ancient times. The goddess of Jade Light had borrowed it from an almighty in the God realm to repair the Five Elements world. A divine artifact of this level would definitely be able to heal his Dao injuries. Most importantly, Ji Tianqing had already fused with the Heaven-Mending Pearl for more than 100 years. He had already refined it into his natal divine artifact. This method works. Let's give it a try. End of chapter. Chapter 37-43. Ji Tianqing began to circulate his energy to heal himself. He activated the power of the Heaven-Mending Orb and released a strand of sacred white light into his sea of consciousness. The sacred white light slowly swam in his sea of consciousness, cleansing his vast sea of consciousness and godhood. At this time, Ji Tianqing used the power of the Heaven-Mending Orb for the first time to enter his sea of consciousness. He was careful and only released a strand of weak white light. He wanted to test its effect and see if there was any danger. After all, he usually used the sacred white light to purify other people's divine power and devour other people's godhood. He couldn't help but worry that the sacred white light entering his sea of consciousness would purify his power and devour his godhood. If that was the case, then it would be fun. Fortunately, that strand of white light swam in his sea of consciousness a few times without any accidents. Ji Tianqing felt that his consciousness was blurry and his head was a little dizzy, but other things were fine. At least, his mind and power were not affected. This made him feel much more at ease, and he slightly increased the sacred white light. After a while, his godhood and sea of consciousness were still fine. Only then did he feel completely at ease and continue to activate more sacred white light. As time passed, more and more white light entered his sea of consciousness. His consciousness also became more and more blurry, and he was about to fall asleep. However, he still couldn't be sure whether the large amount of white light would harm him or whether the power of the Heaven-Mending Orb could heal his Dao injury. Thus, he relied on his strong willpower and forced himself not to fall asleep. 1 hour, 2 hours, 4 hours. After a full 6 hours, his sea of consciousness was completely filled with the sacred white light. And at this time, his consciousness had already sunk into chaos. It was as if he was placed in a vast expanse of white clouds, and he could no longer stay awake. His willpower was also forced to the extreme, and he could no longer resist the drowsiness and exhaustion. Helpless, he could only stop activating the power of the Heaven-Mending Orb, and quickly fell asleep. After an unknown amount of time, he actually entered a dream in an extremely deep sleep. One must know that a peak divine king powerhouse like him never slept, and it was even more impossible for him to dream. Although he could rely on secluded cultivation to increase his strength and recover his mind and power. But in reality, divine kings would also feel tired and tired. However, that tiredness, hardship, and sleepiness were all completely suppressed by his strong willpower. But now, the sacred white light of the heaven-mending orb filled his mind, as if it had taken over his consciousness. He entered the most relaxed state, losing all vigilance, defense, and alertness. The sacred white light washed away the tiredness, fatigue, and sleepiness in the depths of his soul. So much so that he, a divine king powerhouse who had not slept for several hundred years, fell into a deep sleep for the first time, and even had dreams. This dreamland was very quiet and peaceful. It was not chaotic or noisy at all. It was a boundless sea of clouds. He was standing in the sea of clouds as light as a feather, drifting with the wind. The vast expanse of white clouds was like cotton wool that was spread high up in the sky. It was extremely soft. Above his head was a clear blue sky. It was boundless, without a trace of impurities. In this dream, Ji Tianqing felt unprecedentedly relaxed and happy. It was as if his consciousness had been cleansed. Some of his memories, hatred, killing, and schemes had been eliminated. All of his negative emotions had disappeared. His heart was calm. He didn't think about anything, didn't ask about the future, and didn't recall the past. He seemed to have merged with heaven and earth, with the clouds and mist. He wanted to drift with the wind and wander between heaven and earth forever. At this moment, he even felt that the sea of clouds and the sky were a warm embrace. He was willing to lie in the embrace of heaven and earth, carefree and in eternal sleep. Ji Tianqing also didn't know how long he drifted in the sea of clouds. In this sky and sea of clouds, one couldn't see the passage of time at all. It could be a day, or a year, or even 100 years. Finally, Ji Tianqing's soul became crystal clear, pure, and flawless. He let out a long breath of turbid air, and a trace of thought appeared in his consciousness. Phew! I've never been so relaxed in my life as today. I don't need to think about anything, and I don't have any emotions. There's only boundless peace. Drifting in the sky, it seems like there's no passage of time, as if it's close to eternity. It turns out that the sky is actually so beautiful. No wonder after 10,000 years, a million years, there's still no trace of the passage of time. Maybe this is the difference between heaven and earth. The earth has emotions, so it ages quickly, and the sea turns into mulberry fields. But the heavens are heartless, so there are no traces of time. These thoughts were naturally born from Ji Tianqing's drifting in the sea of clouds for so long. Vaguely, he seemed to have understood something. He had touched the peak of the divine way, and was closer to the final step of the divine way. In his previous life, he was a peak divine king, or even the strongest divine king in the world. He had already taken half a step. He was only a sliver away from breaking through the divine king realm, grasping the power of the heavenly Tao, and reaching the so-called God-Emperor realm. And now, he had comprehended the heavenly Tao, and seemed to have reached the same state as before. He was one step closer to the peak divine king realm. In this life, I must cultivate the heaven-vanquishing formation, break through to the God-Emperor realm, kill those 5 God-Emperors, and take back the eternal heavenly book. The eternal heavenly book and the heaven-vanquishing formation are 2 parts. If I successfully cultivate these 2 divine techniques, I wonder what realm I can reach. Ji Tianqing thought to himself. But at this moment, he suddenly realized that the blue sky in front of him was no longer pure and flawless. The sky thousands of miles away was actually densely packed with black lines. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that they were cracks in space, and one could vaguely see the dark void. The originally peaceful sky was actually shattered. Ji Tianqing hurriedly flew over to check the situation, and thought to himself, strange, when my mind was calm and clear, the sky was still perfect. Just as I thought of my hatred and future goals, a crack in space appeared in the sky. Could it be that the change in the sky is a sign of something? Ji Tianqing knew that he was in a dream, and also knew that the shattering of the sky was actually an illusion. But he could not help but think, was this a sign from the heavenly Tao? Was the heavenly Tao hinting to him that the heavens were emotionless and desireless, so that it could last forever and be flawless? Or perhaps, this sea of clouds and the sky represented his sea of consciousness, and the crack in space represented his Tao injury? Ji Tianqing flew near the crack in space, and carefully observed the pitch-black cracks, thinking about what to do. Whether it was a sign from the heavenly Tao, or it represented his Tao injury, he felt that since there was such a change, he had to find a way to resolve it. However, when he wanted to use his spatial divine ability to repair the crack in space, he found that he did not have a trace of divine power. Floating in the sea of clouds, he did not have a body, nor did he have a godhead. He was just a faint wisp of consciousness. He was filled with anxiety and helplessness, and could only watch as the crack in space spread in all directions, cutting the sky into pieces. Chapter 37:44. In the beginning, there were only a few thousand cracks in the sky, and they covered an area of 100 miles. As time passed, Ji Tianqing could only watch as the number and length of the cracks increased rapidly. 2 hours later, there were more than 10,000 cracks in the sky. The shortest crack was a few hundred miles long, and the longest was tens of thousands of miles long. The sky within 100,000 miles was torn apart by the cracks in the sky. Through the densely packed gaps and holes, he could clearly see the void outside. In the dark and cold void, there were raging void storms and vortexes nearby, and there were shining stars in the distance. As the cracks in the sky expanded, void storms constantly passed through the gaps and entered the space he was in. As a result, the sky tore and shattered faster, and the white sea of clouds was swept away by the void storms, disappearing without a trace. The void began to invade and expand, and the darkness continued to spread, engulfing this space bit by bit. Ji Tianqing was extremely anxious and worried, but there was nothing he could do. He was not sure what the shattering of the sky and the void invasion meant. But he knew that it was definitely not a good thing. I have to do something to stop the shattering of the sky and the expansion of the void. Ji Tianqing thought silently, racking his brains to think of a way. However, he thought of more than a dozen ways, but none of them could be implemented. After all, he was just a transparent wisp of consciousness, without a body or power. 2 hours, 4 hours. After 4 hours, Ji Tianqing despaired. He could not stop the shattering of the sky at all, and could only watch as the void expanded. At this time, the number of cracks in the sky had already exceeded 100,000. The shattering of the sky and the area swallowed by the dark void had also exceeded a radius of 300,000 miles. It's over, something terrible must have happened. Ji Tianqing muttered to himself, feeling a little depressed. As expected. When he finished speaking, the cracks in the sky spread even faster, and the void expanded even faster. Even the void storm became even more violent. Ji Tianqing watched this scene, but there was nothing he could do. He could only smile helplessly. Then, he realized that the speed of the cracks in the sky and the expansion of the void had slowed down a little. This seems a little strange. A thought flashed through his mind as he suddenly realized something. Vaguely, he seemed to have grasped some clues. Therefore, he no longer watched the spatial cracks spread and ignored the void invasion and expansion. He began to recall what had happened 6 hours ago. After a few breaths, he suddenly grasped the key clue and seemed to have found the answer. In the past few hours, I watched as the sky shattered and the void expanded. Whenever I was agitated, worried, or anxious, the greater the fluctuation of my emotions, the faster the sky would shatter and the void would expand. When I felt helpless and calm, the speed at which the sky was shattering and the void was expanding also slowed down. So that's how it was. I understand now. At this moment, Ji Tianqing was suddenly enlightened. He dispelled the doubts and worries in his heart and calmly watched the sky shatter and the void spread. He forced himself not to worry, not to be anxious, and not to even think. He calmed himself down, and his thoughts calmed down. In other words, he watched all of this with his own eyes, and there was not a trace of emotion in his heart. It was as if he had become an emotionless being, like the sky, the sea of clouds, or the stubborn rock. Even if the sky shattered and the void spread, it had nothing to do with him. This move was indeed effective. The rapidly spreading spatial crack and the rapidly expanding dark void actually slowed down greatly until it completely stopped. After 10 breaths, the spatial crack stopped growing and the void also stopped expanding. Ji Tianqing thought to himself that he had guessed correctly, but there was no longer any fluctuation in his emotions, not even a trace of happiness or excitement. Another 100 breaths passed, and new changes took place in the sky and the void, which had been almost motionless. Under the invisible power of the will of the heavenly Tao, the numerous spatial cracks began to heal. The dark void was also shrinking, and the previously invaded space was also returning to normal. Ji Tianqing still watched calmly, as if it had nothing to do with him, without the slightest fluctuation in his emotions. A quarter of an hour, 2 hours, 6 hours. After an entire day, the hundreds of thousands of spatial cracks had all disappeared. The hundreds of thousands of miles of space that had been invaded by the void also returned to normal. The white clouds were still boundless, and the sky was a clear blue without any impurities. Only then did Ji Tianqing come out of his emotionless state. Then, this mysterious and ethereal dream realm began to blur and dissipate. Ji Tianqing's dream realm ended, and his consciousness gradually awakened as he slowly opened his eyes. Looking around, he saw a familiar scene. It was still under the blood flame sacred tree. Like his friends and family, he was sitting cross-legged in meditation, maintaining a cultivation posture. Nothing had changed, except that a year had passed in the distorted space-time. That dream actually lasted for an entire year. I haven't slept for more than 100 years, that dream was really long. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and recalled that strange dream realm, and the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. Ha ha ha. I really have groundless fears and overstepped my boundaries. The shattering of the sky and the invasion of the void will naturally be stopped and repaired by the will of the heavenly Tao. I'm not the will of the heavenly Tao, but I'm actually more anxious than the will of the heavenly Tao. How laughable. Recalling his anxious and worried emotions in the dream realm, he couldn't help but laugh at himself. At this time, he suddenly remembered that he was clearly using the heaven-mending pearl to heal his Tao injuries, so how did he fall into a deep sleep, and even enter a strange dream realm? Thinking of the heaven-mending pearl, healing, and the strange dream realm, he hurriedly used his mind to look inside, and checked the condition of the injuries in his sea of consciousness. What surprised him was that the sacred white light that filled his sea of consciousness had already completely disappeared. And the fine cracks on his divinity, as well as those model Tao injuries, had actually decreased by 20%. This result made him rather happy, and also felt that it was inconceivable. The heaven-mending pearl can indeed heal my Tao injuries, and the healing speed is so fast. Just sleeping in the dream realm for a year, and 20% of my Tao injuries were healed. At this rate, I only need 5 years of healing, and my Tao injuries will be completely healed. 5 years in the distorted spacetime was only equivalent to 30 days in the dragon realm. Such an astonishing healing speed far exceeded Ji Tianqing's expectations. His mind was set, and he no longer had a trace of worry. He thought to himself, with a divine item like the heaven-mending pearl, I won't have to be afraid of Tao injuries when fighting with a peak divine king in the future. After a moment, he collected his thoughts, and thought of another matter. I slept in the dream realm for a year, and 7 days passed in the outside world. I wonder if Tang Wu, Lan Qi, and the others have completed their mission to uncover the spy. He was thinking about this matter, so he ended his cultivation and left the distorted spacetime. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.